Chapter 1137. Etienne's explanation made many elders deeply feel that way. This kind of situation was not strange. If one could casually impart martial arts, one would know how many people obtained this inheritance just by looking at the names engraved on the cliff. If these people who obtained the inheritance could impart it, they would have already imparted this inheritance a long time ago. In fact, there was no news at all, proving that it could not be imparted to the outside. This indeed can't be imparted to the outside. Just roughly talk about the situation inside. Elder Go Huang was a little interested in the inner workings of the heavenly venerate path. The other elders looked over one after another, their eyes all revealing some interest. Elder Shao Tian's gaze became gloomy instead, as if thinking about something. Below, I encountered heavenly venerate vast expanses divine sense. It's roughly the meaning of recruiting disciples. Whoever can climb to the end and pass the test can become his in-name disciple. In the future, if one breaks through to heavenly venerate, they can become an official disciple, Etienne answered truthfully. This was not some secret. Moreover, if he did not say it out, they definitely would not believe it. He said that it was an impossible thing to go one round inside. Nobody would believe it. Heavenly venerate vast expanses in-name disciple. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. Everyone exchanged glances. They did not expect that there was such a background there. Because they did not have a disciple climb to the end, they never knew the truth in this aspect. It was really a kind of tragedy. Heavenly venerate vast expanse, I've heard of this heavenly venerate before. He's an extremely famous heavenly venerate. Among so many heavenly venerates, not the strongest, but he can at least rank in the top 5. One of the elders said solemnly. Top 5 heavenly venerates. Everyone's eyes constricted. Heavenly venerates were out of reach for them. Even if they broke through to heavenly venerate, they would at most be at the bottom level. Now, heavenly venerate vast expanse could actually rank in the top 5. This was still among all the known heavenly venerate. To be able to rank in the top 5, it was already not something that they could imagine. Heavenly venerates were already powerful enough. To be able to charge into the top 5, it could be seen that their strength was extremely formidable. Etienne's eyes narrowed. He did not expect that the background of this master of his would be so astonishing. The top 5 Empyrean existences could be said to be able to walk unhindered among Empyreans. So you're saying that the heaven-pilfering sacred ground was established by Empyrean vast expanse? Elder Go Huang and the others finally understood the situation. Yes, the heaven-pilfering sacred ground was created by Empyrean vast expanse. Moreover, among so many god realms, he didn't just place one heaven-pilfering sacred ground. Instead, he placed several heaven-pilfering sacred grounds in order to select disciples. Etienne explained. Only now did the elders suddenly realize what was going on. So there was actually such a situation. So that's how it is. Looks like you've already become heavenly premier vast expanses in-name disciple? The eyes of Elder Go Huang and the others lit up. Yes, this disciple has already become heavenly premier vast expanses disciple in name. However, this disciple still needs to break through to the heavenly premier vast expanses official disciple, Etienne said. So you're only an in-name disciple. I thought you were already an official disciple. You're only an in-name disciple. As long as you haven't broken through to the heavenly premier vast expanse, you can't be considered an official disciple. What a waste of time. Elder Shao Tian leaned against his chair, feeling disdainful. The difference between an in-name disciple and an official disciple was too big. The life and death of an in-name disciple had nothing to do with Empyrean vast expanse. It meant that if he couldn't even find his master, how could he rely on him? Only official disciples could enjoy such treatment. If he became an official disciple, he could do whatever he wanted. Etienne's eyes flashed. He smiled and said, Yes, this disciple is slow-witted. Through hard work, I barely became an in-name disciple. I became the first junior in the heavenly spring divine realm to reach the finish line and become an in-name disciple. Impudent! Elder Shao Tian's face darkened. He slammed the table and said angrily, "What do you mean by that?" Yi Tianyun's words had a hidden meaning. An in-name disciple didn't have a backer, but at least he was the number one person in the heavenly spring divine realm. It was better than Elder Shao Tian's side. If none of them reached the finish line, wouldn't they be even more trash? Elder Dong Yun suddenly laughed. He looked at Elder Shao Tian and said, "Elder Shao Tian, I was asking you what you meant by that. So what if you're an in-name disciple? At least you received a heavenly venerate's inheritance. In the future, you will have a chance to become a heavenly venerate. And Elder Shao Tian, the in-name disciples that you said aren't worth mentioning, I wonder how many of your disciples can reach the finish line?" Elder Dong Yun couldn't help but quarrel with Elder Shao Tian. Yi Tianyun was his disciple. He would definitely side with his own disciple. Moreover, ordinary people couldn't receive such an honor, and Elder Shao Tian was still mocking him. If his disciple completed the heavenly venerate path, he would have told everyone. How could he still feel bored? "Elder Dong Yun, I'm just stating the facts. Do you think it's easy to become a heavenly venerate? Even if you receive a heavenly venerate's inheritance, you might not be able to break through." Elder Shao Tian said coldly. "That's true. At least compared to others, you have a greater chance." Elder Dong Yun similarly retorted coldly. All right, stop arguing." Elder Go Huang looked at them and said in a solemn voice, "Making a ruckus here, where's the propriety? Being able to obtain an heavenly venerate's inheritance is already pretty good. Looks like we have to increase our grooming efforts and let our disciples walk the heavenly venerate path. When they reach the end, they can obtain an heavenly venerate's inheritance. What a pity! If we could walk, that would be for the best. Divine Lord Cultivation could not walk the heavenly venerate path. The heavenly venerate path similarly had restrictions. If the cultivation was too high, there was no way to walk it. If they could walk it, they could probably walk the heavenly venerate path. Elder Shao Tian's eyes lit up. In that case, we can all get a little more of the distribution on the jade pendant? Elder Shao Tian, didn't you say that you weren't interested previously? Isn't it just an in-name disciple and not an official disciple? What's the use of taking it? Elder Dong Yun circled back to the topic. Elder Shao Tian's expression was livid, and he said in a solemn voice, "Elder Dong Yun, I'm thinking for my disciples. Didn't Elder Go Huang say just now that even if it's an in-name disciple, it's at least an heavenly venerate's inheritance? I want to let my disciples see the world. Could it be that I can't?" Yi Tianyun shook his head repeatedly as he listened by the side. This Elder Shao Tian was sour enough. When it was his turn to have a chance, he was like a dog, pouncing over immediately. Fine. Everything is up to you." Elder Dong Yun shot a glance over at Yi Tianyun and nodded at him, indicating that with him around, he absolutely would not let Yi Tianyun suffer any grievances. Chapter 1138. Elder Dong Yun would definitely help Yi Tianyun get back at him. Although it wasn't appropriate for Yi Tianyun to go against an elder, he was still an elder and didn't care about such things. Elder Go Huang felt helpless as he watched from the side. However, Elder Shao Tian had indeed gone overboard. Seeing Elder Dong Yun's attitude, Elder Shao Tian was about to explode from anger. He immediately thought of something and said, "Oh right, I almost forgot to mention. Prepare for the competition in the palace. I wonder if Elder Dong Yun will let Earthly Monarch Tianyun participate? After completing the Way of the Heavenly Lord, his ability shouldn't be too bad, right? Wouldn't it be a pity if he isn't allowed to participate?" Yi Tianyun frowned and didn't know what Elder Shao Tian was planning. Why did he suddenly bring up the competition in the palace? However, the palace was indeed going to hold a competition soon, and that was the smithing competition. There had always been such a rule, and it wasn't because of his arrival that there was an additional rule. He just joined not long ago and hasn't grasped the abilities of the Palace of Gods. How can he participate so quickly? Elder Dong Yun immediately retorted. Tianyun had indeed just joined and hadn't fully familiarized himself with the Palace of Gods before he was dragged to steal from the Empyrean sacred land. It meant that he hadn't even grasped the forging martial arts that the Palace of Gods was proud of and had to participate. It was undoubtedly a disadvantage. It was undeniable that the way of the Heavenly Lord's inheritance was not bad. Elder Dong Yun didn't know what it was, but it definitely wasn't a forging martial art. Heavenly Lord Vast Expanse didn't specialize in forging, but in combat, which meant that he didn't have any of the three major professions. That might be the case, but isn't there still some time? Since he is Heavenly Lord Vast Expanse's in-name disciple, he must have astonishing talent, right? If he doesn't even dare to participate, wouldn't he be letting down his reputation? Elder Xiao Tian started to praise Tianyun to death. If he didn't participate, he would be letting down Heavenly Lord Vast Expanse. What do you mean there's some time? He only has 1 or 2 months. How can he learn it? Elder Dong Yun was enraged. Elder Xiao Tian, you are abusing your position to take revenge. What abusing my position to take revenge? I just want to see his potential. Elder Dong Yun, you can't speak carelessly. Elder Xiao Tian looked at Tianyun and smiled. How about it, Heavenly Monarch Tianyun, are you willing to accept this challenge? Don't worry, even if you lose, it doesn't matter. Anyway, it's just a try and gain some experience. Tianyun looked at him and said with a faint smile, Elder Xiao Tian, well said. Then I will definitely participate. Don't worry about that. He didn't know what Elder Xiao Tian was thinking, but what was wrong with participating? It was not a problem for him at all. Alright. Elder Xiao Tian let out a loud laugh. His eyes were filled with success as he looked at him and said, Now that's ambition. Everyone heard it, Earth Monarch Tianyun will be participating. Elder East Cloud, you can't stop him from participating. Elder Dong Yun's face sank. He didn't expect Tianyun to take the bait. Don't worry. Since he has agreed, he will definitely participate, Elder Dong Yun said solemnly. With your guarantee, it's good enough? Elder Xiao Tian's eyes were cold as if he could already see the result. Elder Go Huang, who was watching from the side, felt very helpless. These two elders had been fighting each other all this time, and they had not stopped at all. Let me in, let me in. At this moment, a shout came from outside. What's going on outside? Elder Go Huang frowned. They were in a meeting, so why was it so noisy outside? Elder. At this moment, a familiar figure rushed in from outside. Tianyun turned his head and looked. Wasn't this the cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven that he had left far behind? He even called himself the cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven. Those who hadn't heard of him would think that he could fly. Cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven? When the elders saw him, they all recognized him. Cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven's talent wasn't bad. Among the many Lord of Heavens, he could be considered to be at the top. Because his talent was good, his status naturally wasn't bad. Therefore, he was allowed to enter the Elder's Temple. However, no matter how good his status was, he couldn't barge in casually. Otherwise, it would be disrespectful to the elders. Cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven, what's the matter? Elder Go Huang frowned. He felt that cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven was a little rude. However, he still patiently asked what he wanted to say. Otherwise, why would he be in such a hurry? You really are back. When cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven saw Tianyun, he said to Elder Go Huang, Elder Go Huang, I heard that he has successfully reached the celestial sovereign path. I highly suspect that he used some treasure, or that the elders gave him some treasure. I feel that it's a little strange, so I specially came to ask. Tianyun was instantly speechless. He had seen stupid people, but he had never seen someone so stupid. He was already here, yet he still said such stupid things. The elders looked at each other. They had no idea what he meant. Then, they looked at Elder Dong-yun, waiting to see what he had to say. Cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven, are you here to be funny? If I had such a treasure, why didn't I give it to others? Why did I give it to a new disciple? Elder Dong-yun's face darkened. He felt that Cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven was here to be funny. But if he didn't have any treasure, how could he have reached the celestial sovereign path? Cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven looked at Tianyun and said in a low voice, and he's a human. He must have used some treasure. Even if the elders didn't give it to him, he must have used it himself to climb up. Therefore, I hope that he will hand over the treasure and let the disciples share it. He can't have any selfish motives. This is for the development of the heavenly spring holy realm. Cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven's words were grand and majestic. He directly raised the status of the entire heavenly spring holy realm. Tianyun didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard it. He originally thought that these elders were enough to make things difficult for him. He didn't expect that the one who would make things difficult for him would be this idiot. Hearing this, the elders looked at Tianyun with strange expressions. They didn't know how Tianyun would explain it. I think that having this treasure is already heaven-defying. I don't know what kind of treasure can suppress vast heavenly venerate's great array, but if there is, why didn't I take the heaven-stealing divine ground that vast heavenly venerate set up? Tianyun retorted lightly. What vast sky sovereign? Cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven didn't know the reason and felt that it was a little strange. Elder, I think that Cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven is a little delusional. I believe that everyone went to the vast sky sovereign path. What kind of treasure do you think I have that can subdue vast sky sovereign? Tianyun felt that it was ridiculous. In his opinion, Cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven was asking to be humiliated. Originally, everything was over. Now, he still came up to cause trouble. Wasn't this embarrassing the elders? Chapter 1139. This was the most ignorant thing about the Lord of Heaven's mouth. He didn't know anything and actually came up to cause trouble. Clearly, he was blown up by Tianyun. When he knew that Tianyun had returned, he immediately rushed over to question him. Who knew that this question would result in his own face being slapped swollen. If Tianyun had a treasure that could suppress the heavenly venerate path, he would have long soared to the sky. That was set up by the vast heavenly venerate. It required at least a high-grade heavenly Tao treasure, or even a higher-grade treasure, to be able to suppress it. How could Tianyun have a treasure of this grade? Even if he had such a treasure, if his cultivation was too low, he wouldn't be able to display its effects. At the very least, so many elders didn't have such a treasure. They all knew how powerful the heavenly venerate path was. It was completely a test of one's Tao heart. To suppress this kind of illusion, even more precious treasures were needed. Among so many treasures, the most precious type was the type that suppressed illusions. After all, towards the later stages of cultivation, there would be the tribulation of mental demons. It was extremely difficult to have a treasure that could suppress mental demons or illusions. If it was similarly a high-grade reincarnation-grade treasure, a treasure that could suppress mental demons would definitely be comparable to 2 or 3 treasures of the same grade. This was how precious it was. Therefore, such words coming from the mouth of the Lord of Heaven was already scolded as extremely brainless. Saying such words without knowing the situation was asking to be humiliated. This heavenly venerate path was set up by the heavenly venerate. Only then did the Lord of Heaven realize what nonsense he had said. If it wasn't a treasure given by an elder, Tianyun couldn't possibly have this treasure. This meant that from start to finish, it was him who thought that Tianyun was cheating. Zonyun, Lord of Heaven, you barged into the elders' meeting without permission and asked a question that was extremely laughable. Elder Go Huang's expression became solemn. Now, I sentence you to be imprisoned in the reflection tower for 2,000 years. During this period, you can't take half a step out. If you sneak out, you'll be imprisoned for an additional 2,000 years. Elder Rui Feng, do you agree to my punishment? Elder Rui Feng was the master of Zhong Yun's Lord of Heaven, so she naturally had the right to ask about this matter. I agree with Elder Go Huang's punishment, Elder Rui Feng said expressionlessly. In his heart, he had cursed the Lord of Heaven countless times. He really wanted to protect Zhong Yun. However, this Lord of Heaven Zhong Yun was too stupid. If he wanted to cause trouble outside, he would definitely be fine. However, there was a rule that one absolutely could not barge into an elders' meeting, unless it was an extremely important matter. Who would have thought that things would turn out to be so childish? This made everyone suspect whether this Lord of Heaven Zhong Yun's head had been kicked by a donkey. He was acting crazy in front of so many elders. Even if he wanted to die, he shouldn't act like this, right? Elder Rui Feng. When the Lord of Heaven Zhong Yun opened his mouth, wanting to shout something, the guards had already surrounded him, wanting to drag him into the reflection tower. Go and reflect properly. Don't be so impulsive in the future. Elder Rui Feng sighed. His disciple's talent was not bad, but his head was not too good. No, don't, the Lord of Heaven Zhong Yun screamed. To be dragged into the reflection tower for 2,000 years, he would definitely go crazy. 2,000 years was not a long time, but to be trapped in one place for the entire time, to make a genius like him run around everywhere and enjoy those respectful gazes, he would definitely not be happy. Elder Rui Feng did not even look at him. This kind of matter could only be like this. What else could he do? Elders, my apologies. The Lord of Heaven Zhong Yun recently encountered a bottleneck in his cultivation, that's why he made such a joke. I hope that elders do not take offense. Elder Rui Feng stood up and apologized. As the master, he definitely had to clean up his disciples' mess. It's fine. Elder Go Huang waved his hand and continued, Lord of Heaven Cloud Earth, since you have chosen to participate in the palace's grand competition, I look forward to your performance. You have obtained the Heavenly Sovereign's inheritance, so I hope that you will cultivate well in the future. If you have any questions, you can look for me. Elder Go Huang's last sentence could be said to carry a lot of weight. His position here was extremely high, and these words were equivalent to making him Yi Tianyun's backer. When the time came, who would dare to provoke him? Many thanks, Elder Go Huang. Yi Tianyun stood up and expressed his thanks. After saying this, they each left. They originally wanted to discuss Yi Tianyun's situation and what kind of treatment they wanted to give him. Now it seemed that they would observe him for the time being. Before Elder Xiao Tian left, he glanced at Yi Tianyun, the corners of his mouth curling into a cold smile. I really didn't expect you to complete the way of the Heavenly Sovereign. That's really incredible. Elder Dong Yun praised Yi Tianyun the entire way. This special honor could be said to have made him proud. I didn't know that I could complete it. It was really luck, Yi Tianyun said modestly. If this is luck, then everyone else is completely unlucky. Elder Dong Yun smiled, then his expression immediately turned serious. However, there is one thing that you are indeed too impulsive about. I know that you are quite capable, but this is the palace's grand competition. This is a little too impulsive. It seems that the palace attaches great importance to this grand competition. Yi Tianyun looked at Elder Dong Yun's expression and knew that this matter was definitely not simple. It's not just attaching great importance. This is related to the changes in the palace's camp. The various elders and even the region lord will come to watch. Especially the region lord, who is often elusive. However, he will definitely appear in the palace's grand competition. If your performance is too bad, the region lord will definitely not appreciate it. At that time, you will be building a wall for yourself. Elder Dong Yun shook his head and said hatefully, Elder Xiao Tian deliberately wants you to die from excessive praise. He wants you to make a fool of yourself in front of the Region Lord. That's why he did this. So that's how it is. Even the Region Lord came to watch. Tianyun squinted his eyes. In today's meeting, there was no Region Lord. That's right. The palace's grand competition always sends out the 3 most outstanding people to compete against each other. Now you are one of them. The other 2 are Huolien and Yulong. The other party sends out their most outstanding people, so the competition is extremely difficult. Every one of them has a very strong demonic flame, and their ability to control it is top-notch. Elder Dong Yun said in a low voice, especially their forging technique, which has reached the level of uncanny workmanship. They can create extremely high-quality weapons. Weapons are always the most important, so even the Region Lord pays close attention to the palace's grand competition. Tianyun nodded. No wonder the Region Lord personally came to watch. If the outstanding geniuses were trained well, the Heavenly Spring Holy Realm's weapons would be secured in the future. Elder Dongyun, does the Heavenly Spring Holy Realm have a water element core? Tianyun asked the important question. Water element core? Of course there is. They even specially divided it into the Region Lord's shrine, Elder Dongyun said. Then, do I have a chance to enter and cultivate? Tianyun's eyes brightened. There was a chance. That's a little difficult. Unless you get the Region Lord's approval, it will be difficult to enter. Even if you complete the Heavenly Sovereign Path, it won't work. Elder Dongyun shook his head and said, the Region Lord's personality is hard to understand. No one knows what he is thinking. What if I get a good result in the palace's grand competition? Tianyun asked. If you get a good result and get the Region Lord's recognition, then it won't be a problem. All right, then get a good result. Tianyun smiled. This time, he had to give it his all. Chapter 1140. You want to go to the core to cultivate? Elder Dongyun looked him up and down and asked in puzzlement, don't you have a demonic fire? Why do you want to go there to cultivate? Generally speaking, those who had a demonic fire in their bodies were more or less fire-attributed. Even if they didn't have a fire-attributed physique, it was impossible to connect them to water-attributed energy. After all, the two were conflicting and couldn't be connected. That's right. I plan to go there to cultivate. Although it's water-attributed, it's still very helpful to me. Tianyun explained. He didn't say that he was going to the water core to cultivate in order to break through to the 10th refinement Earth Lord. If word got out, even Elder Dongyun would think that he was an idiot. How could there be a 10th refinement Earth Lord? The 10th refinement Earth Lord was a level that didn't exist. After so many years, it had been deeply rooted in people's hearts. Even many celestial venerables believed that it was impossible for there to be a 10th refinement Earth Lord. Therefore, he couldn't be bothered to say more. As long as it wasn't the truth, no one would believe that there was a 10th refinement Earth Lord. If you really need it, then you must obtain excellent results in the Divine Creation Palace tournament. Otherwise, the governor won't let you go to the water core to cultivate. Elder Dongyun said. No problem. I will definitely work hard to obtain excellent results in the tournament. Tianyun nodded. He originally thought that he would be able to smoothly enter through the celestial venerable path. From Elder Dongyun's words, he understood that the governor's situation wasn't simple. Just based on this, the governor wouldn't allow it. All right, I'll take you to understand the forging techniques of our Divine Creation Palace now. Elder Dongyun said in a deep voice, the situation is urgent now. You still need to cultivate a lot. You don't have much time. You only have less than 2 months. During this time, you have to add time to your cultivation. Then, under Elder Dongyun's lead, they returned to the Divine Creation Palace. He didn't directly bring Tianyun to the Scripture Pavilion. Instead, he brought him directly into the Divine Creation Palace. They had just arrived at the Divine Creation Palace. The flames here were much higher than those outside. If an ordinary person were to enter, they would have already died from the heat. Even an ordinary Star Lord wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Dang, dang, dang. Just as Tianyun entered, he saw a burly man holding a giant hammer. He began to smash down again and again, refining the melted material into a perfect weapon. On the other hand, there were other smithing skills. One would directly smash with one's hands and use the simplest and most violent method to quench the impurities, leaving behind the essence in the end. Then, he would use his astral power to purify the impurities in the void quenching. There were many ways to do this, and all of them had different effects. Everyone, stop for a moment. Elder Dongyun clapped his hands to signal for everyone to stop. Soon, the Fire Lotus, the Lord of Heaven, and the others surrounded him. When they saw Tianyun, they were pleasantly surprised. Little junior brother is back. How does it feel to steal the heavens and steal the earth? That's right. I was so focused on forging that I didn't even know that junior brother had returned. Quick, tell me, what's the situation with stealing the heavens and God's earth? Yeah, none of us have been to pilfering the heavens before, so we don't know what it's like. They surrounded him one by one, extremely curious about pilfering heaven divine land. Since they were preparing to participate in the Divine Creation Palace tournament, they basically cultivated here. There were furnaces all around, so it was undoubtedly a good place to forge weapons. Alright, let's talk about these things later. Now we need to talk about something more serious. Immediately, Elder Dong Yun told the general situation. After listening to it, everyone was shocked. They all looked at Tianyun and felt that it was a little unbelievable. Originally, there were three main forces: Fire Lotus, Imperial Dragon, and Still Water. Now, Still Water can't be the main force for the time being. Elder Dongyun shook his head. In order to participate in the Divine Creation Palace tournament, the Lord of Heaven worked extremely hard to gain face. Now that Tianyun had taken his spot, how could he not comfort him? The Divine Creation Palace only sent 3 people to participate in the tournament. The rest could only watch from the side or cheer on. Therefore, they could only send 3 people each time. They could only participate 3 times at most before they could no longer participate. They could only send 3 people, mainly for the sake of excellence. Even the domain master personally came to watch. If the disciple's standard was average, the domain master would be unhappy. The Lord of Heaven's pupils constricted. He never expected to hear such a result. He immediately looked at Tianyun and said solemnly, "Junior brother, tell me how you feel right now." "I'll do my best and definitely won't drag the senior brothers down," Tianyun said solemnly. "Good. Your words are enough. I'll participate next time. I'll give this opportunity to you," the Lord of Heaven said solemnly. "If I find out that you don't treat it well, don't blame me for being impolite. This was an extremely serious tournament. Either do your best or don't participate." There was no third choice. If he found out that Tianyun was not paying enough attention, he would undoubtedly be furious. "Senior brother Shursui, if such a situation really happens, I'll leave the Divine Fabrication Palace on my own accord," Tianyun said firmly. "This is what I'm about to do, so I'll definitely do my best and be responsible for my actions." "Good." The others were very satisfied with Tianyun's words. Tianyun's previous performance was not bad, and he could see the standards of the others. However, he knew nothing about smithing, so he was naturally worried. However, seeing Tianyun so confident, they were not disappointed. Even if they really lost, they would at least take it seriously. "For the rest of the time, you will be cultivating here. If there's anything you don't understand, ask them for advice." Elder Dongyun said, "Of course, you can ask me as well. The smithing books are on the side, you can take a look." There were many books on the side, all of them related to smithing. Compared to blindly reading books, it was undoubtedly simpler and more direct to observe the smithing skills of the other senior brothers. Elder Dongyun knew the problem, so he directly let Tianyun observe the other senior brothers smithing. Under normal circumstances, observing others smithing was extremely rude. As they were all senior brothers, it was normal for them to observe. The key was that there was not enough time, so Elder Dongyun hoped that he could improve faster. His control of fire was not bad, and his demonic fire was not bad. With these as a prerequisite, it would not be difficult to improve. No problem, I'll be troubling senior brothers. Tianyun cupped his hands and said, "It's no trouble, after all, junior brother, you helped us win a lot of astral stones." "That's right, what's there to be troubled about? You must obtain good results in the tournament. Even if you can't get to the front, at least make Elder Xiao Tian feel disgusted." Chapter 1141. In the following time, Tianyun took the forging technique book and read it one by one, basically 10 lines at a glance. With the help of the appraisal eye, he scanned the contents into his head and firmly remembered them. These contents are of great help to him. Although he is a grade 1 divine craftsman, which belongs to a relatively high stage, his comprehensive ability is not very high. When he read the forging technique books here, he realized that what he learned is the foundation. The system provides only the foundation, there are still many things that need to be filled. This is just like the upgrade gift pack provided before, it is just a basic ability, it is not something that is extremely heaven-defying. Now, he was eagerly absorbing the experience here, constantly strengthening himself. Coupled with the guidance of other senior brothers, it makes his cultivation faster. He knows that if he wants to win this battle, there is still a lot to learn, so he must increase his efforts in cultivation. I almost forgot, I still have the upgrade gift pack here. He suddenly remembered that he still has the upgrade gift pack that he has not opened. The upgrade gift pack was given when he came to the Divine Realm. It is just that it needs to be opened by Earth Lord Julien. After breaking through, he was too busy and forgot to open it. He immediately found a place to meditate and pretended to be meditating. Open Earth Lord Julien Upgrade Gift Pack. Ding, Open Earth Lord Julien Upgrade Gift Pack. Obtained 300 times EXP card, 100 times Crazy Point card, 100 times Proficiency card, 100 times Sin Value card, Heavenly Master Upgrade Gift Pack. Can only be opened when reaching Heavenly Master Realm. Deducting 1 billion Crazy Point, 50 million Sin Value, starting to upgrade data. In an instant, a large part of his data was deducted. The data that he worked so hard to earn was directly taken away. Although he can't use it for the time being, it is still very painful to have a large part of it taken away. Ding, Start to upgrade physical data. When the upgrade data prompt appeared, he suddenly felt that the energy in his body began to change, especially the power in his body, it seems to be beginning to evolve rapidly. Especially his body. He felt that his body has become full of extreme compatibility. He felt that he can absorb any kind of energy. Before, he could absorb other energy, but it was definitely not as smooth as now, it is like becoming an omnipotent body. Ding. You have successfully leveled up your physique to become the heavenly god body. You can now absorb all kinds of energy for your own use, regardless of the type and type of energy. At the same time, it can be transformed into any kind of physique, allowing the body to be more compatible with all kinds of martial arts and energy. Ding, Starting to upgrade experience data. Ding, Successfully leveled up data. Experience points have been compressed. 1 experience point is equivalent to 100 billion point. At the same time, the experience points can be given to anyone to be converted into energy to help them level up. Great art of imparting, please use it according to the other party's situation to prevent them from exploding. Crazy Point and Sin Point are also compressed, they can't be converted to others, but they can be converted to each other. Ding, Starting to upgrade shop data. Successfully upgraded the merchant shop's data. Added the merchant shop's copy function. As long as you sell something once, the same thing will appear in the merchant shop and you can buy it. Ding. Starting to upgrade favorability. Ding. Successfully upgraded favorability data. Accurately separated the data of men and women. Whether it is favorability or loyalty, detailed data can be seen. Ding, upgrade complete. Lee Tianyun was stunned by this pile of data. He thought that he would just get some data gift packs, but now he found out that it's not just experience cards. He even upgraded his stats once again. Just like when he first came here, everything had changed. Many things have become practical. For example, his body has become heavenly divine body. It can accommodate all kinds of energy and can be converted to each other. It's simply a heaven-defying physique. This meant that when he absorbed other energies, there wouldn't be any conflicts inside. Then there is the experience data. It's simply heaven-defying. He can train his underlings well. He can send the experience points to them. If he uses it, wouldn't his level soar crazily? He got a lot of experience now, but those with low cultivation level don't need so much experience. If he uses it, he can immediately level up dozens of times. Especially his pets, it's easier to level up. When he goes back, he can also let Shiyun and the others improve their cultivation level and make himself stronger. In terms of training his underlings, it's simply divine help. Furthermore, they could exchange energy with each other, which made him feel very shocked. It means that proficiency can be converted to crazy point or converted to sin point. Everything is connected. In this way, where there is a shortage, he can transfer the excess, which is a very humane effect. Finally, the favorability effect, this can be upgraded. He thinks it's very suitable. When he turned his head to look at Senior Sister Fire Lotus, the detailed data came out. Favorability 50 points, favorability 100 points, loyalty 50 points, 100 points is full, 50 points is passing. Then he looked at Senior Brother Imperial Dragon. Favorability 100 points, loyalty 50 points. This time there is no love. If a man likes me, then it's really strange. However, this loyalty of 50 points means that he is still trustworthy. If he wants to reach 100 points of loyalty, then he needs to deepen the situation. However, this loyalty means that he will still betray him, but it's better than those who are 10 or 20, they will stab him in the back. In the past, this data was barely sufficient for the favorability rating. But now it was completely different. Providing data at this time means that he can see a lot of things in the future. Although the previous favorability is high, it doesn't mean that there will be no betrayal. Loyalty was the only thing that mattered. Under extremely high conditions, it would not change. Under the label of loyalty, as long as the loyalty reaches 100 points, it will not drop directly. Unless Lee Tianyun does something that disgusts them, such as robbing their wife and so on, otherwise it will not drop. This is a kind of auxiliary thing, not very important, but it's better than nothing. The most useful is the first 3 points, such as the shop mode. It made his eyes light up. Selling what you need once, then you can buy it again. This sounded magical. A long time ago, he looked for accumulating soul grass everywhere. Now he no longer has to worry about it. As long as he finds one and sells it in the shop, he can keep buying it. The price is a bit expensive, but at least he doesn't need to look around. Chapter 1142. Lee Tianyun was pleasantly surprised. This was an unexpected surprise. He had been busy with the matter previously and only opened the gift pack now. He didn't expect to receive so many surprises. However, after the surprise, he still had to cultivate properly. With the Heaven's divine body, he could strengthen his elemental abilities. He could directly transform himself into a fire-type physique, which was comparable to the holy fire physique. It was a top-notch physique. Cultivating it would definitely yield twice the results with half the effort. Little junior brother, is there anything you don't understand? Is that so? Remember to ask if you have any questions. Don't just stand there like a fool. That's right. Remember to ask. Don't force yourself. When they saw that Tianyun only watched without asking, they felt that it was strange. After all, this was a huge matter, and they couldn't afford to be careless. No, senior brothers, cultivate well. I will just watch from the side. Tianyun didn't force himself. With the help of the appraisal eye, he could already absorb a lot of experience. It could even be said that he could draw according to the gourd and forge something of the same standard as them perfectly. Many of the senior brothers present were first and second grade divine craftsmen, with the highest being third grade divine craftsmen. For example, Fire Lotus and the others were third grade divine craftsmen. They weren't at this level in the past, but they had a breakthrough recently and were third grade divine craftsmen. This was considered a very shocking talent. If they continued to break through like this, they would soon be close to the elder level. Elder East Cloud was a 5th grade divine craftsman and could forge low-grade Heaven's Tao weapons. This could be said to be relatively easy to forge. His true limit was forging mid-grade Heaven's Tao weapons, which was shockingly accurate. However, the failure rate of forging mid-grade Heaven's Tao weapons was slightly higher. Unless one reached the level of a 6th grade divine craftsman, the success rate would greatly increase. Is that so? They looked at each other. Tianyun had been watching from the side and hadn't practiced it before, so they didn't really believe it. Little junior brother, let's be frank. We just don't trust your standard. You say it's fine now, but we don't know what your true standard is. Why don't you forge a weapon now? Let me see how strong it is. Only then can we feel more at ease. This concerns our honor, so we can't afford to be careless. As the representative, High Dragon's senior apprentice brother had to be more straightforward with his words. They didn't know if Tianyun really understood or if he was just pretending. Hence, they had to clarify things. All right, I'll try refining the medial grade reincarnation grade weapon that senior brother Shursui just forged. Tianyun knew that he had to display some of his ability. Otherwise, they wouldn't feel at ease. Not to mention them, even he had to know about the situation. No problem. In that case, let's try the mid-grade reincarnation class weapon. Senior brother High Dragon nodded. Although a middle-grade reincarnation weapon was not Shursui's limit, it could be considered a level that could display his strength. From this, it could be seen how good the technique was. If one wanted to refine a high-grade reincarnation grade, one would need to be of a higher standard. Both Grade 2 and Grade 3 divine craftsmen could refine it. However, the difference in success rate was too great. Under everyone's eyes, Tianyun took the materials that Shursui Lord of Heaven had previously forged and threw them into the alchemy cauldron. His powerful control of fire made him an expert at playing with fire. They had witnessed such standards before. Tianyun's control of fire was very high, which was the most important aspect of forging. With perfect control of fire, the materials were quickly tempered. It wasn't difficult, but the problem was the technique. Tianyun had been observing for a month, and there wasn't much time left to prepare for the tournament of God's Palace. Hence, they were interested in the technique and wanted to see if he had truly cultivated it to perfection. Rise. Tianyun's eyes narrowed as he rapidly extracted the essence from within. Following that, he spun in the air and landed on the metal plate in front of him. Following that, he brandished his fist and smashed it violently. The ability that Shursui Lord of Heaven had displayed was to use his fist to forge a weapon. It was extremely violent. Generally speaking, such a violent forging method was suitable for forging giant sword. Every punch was able to create a shape out of the mass of liquid and spread it out bit by bit, forming the shape of a giant sword. Such proficient techniques were simply better than Shursui Lord of Heaven. Although Tianyun was only a first-grade divine craftsman, the standard that he had displayed wasn't inferior to Shursui Lord of Heaven, who was a second-grade divine craftsman. Everyone's eyes lit up. They didn't expect Tianyun's standard to be so good and reach such an astonishing level. His forging ability was already better than Shui, Lord of Heaven. Although what Shui, Lord of Heaven had displayed previously wasn't his peak ability, it was already very close. Now that Yi Tianyun had displayed his ability that was close to his standard, it definitely wouldn't be a problem for Yi Tianyun to participate in the tournament of God's Palace. Clang! With the final punch, a giant sword was struck out just like that. Although it was just a simple and violent punch, the forged sword wasn't rough at all. In fact, it was very exquisite. The surface of the giant sword was extremely smooth, and it was impossible for there to be a fist mark on it. If there was a fist mark, it wouldn't be able to be used. This forging method was to use the strength on the surface of the fist to spread out the material and shake the material until it was smooth. It's done. Yi Tianyun slapped down, and the giant sword bounced up. After spinning a few rounds in the air, it landed in his hand. With a light flick, a crisp sound could be heard. Immediately after, he handed the giant sword to Shui, Lord of Heaven. This time, he had taken up a slot, so it was naturally up to Shui, Lord of Heaven to evaluate. Not bad, not bad. This standard is even better than mine. If your level goes up a little more, you'll far surpass me. Shui, Lord of Heaven heaved a sigh of relief and said, "This way, there won't be any problem for you to participate in the tournament of God's Palace." That's right. This standard, I was worried for nothing. I thought little junior brother was too embarrassed to ask, but it turns out that you can really learn it just by watching. I've seen people learn it just by watching, and they don't need to train at all. Little junior brother is definitely one of them. I remember now. Isn't little junior brother's judgment of people very strong? If that's the case, it wouldn't be surprising if he could tell something from watching us train. Only then did they remember that Yi Tianyun could tell accurate information from watching people. If it was here, he would have the same effect. But if that was the case, it would really be nature-defying. Being able to tell something from watching people, and being able to tell the effect from watching others train, they didn't know how his eyes worked. Chapter 1143. In the remaining time, Yi Tianyun also joined in the practice and continuously forged weapons. He was actually just trying it out and displaying what he had learned to see how effective it was. With the help of the appraisal eye and the actions of many people, he had already learned most of the forging technique. He didn't dare to say all of them, but he had at least learned most of them. Soon, it was time for the tournament of God's Palace. Under the lead of Elder Dongyun, their group headed to the competition hall of the tournament of God's Palace. When they arrived, there was already a huge crowd. Most of the spectators nearby were not from the palace of God's Palace. They were all spectators from other celestial palaces. The Palace of Gods was a treasure ground that could forge weapons. They wanted to see which genius would appear and make friends with them. When they had the materials in the future, they could ask someone to help them forge weapons. The price would definitely be much cheaper than outside. Hence, the Palace of God's Palace was extremely popular among the other celestial palaces. Those who came to spectate were disciples from the Sword Palace or the Spear Palace. They all hoped that they could have a powerful weapon. When they arrived, those who couldn't participate could only sit in the spectator seat. Those who could be substituted by Elder Dongyun were only Yi Tianyun, Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven, and Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven. Only the participants could enter the venue. The rest couldn't. There are so many people. Yi Tianyun looked around and saw that there were already many groups in front. There were at least 7 groups. Including them, there were a total of 8 groups. Each group was led by an elder. This meant that there were 8 elders. This wasn't surprising as they were all god monarchs. The god territory was so vast and there were too many disciples. There was definitely a need for more elders to guide them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to keep up. 8 groups with 3 people in each group. In total, there were 24 people. They basically represented the strongest newcomers. Every tournament of God's Palace would send newcomers. This time was no exception. Yi Tianyun looked around and saw that most of them were unfamiliar faces. He had never seen them before, so naturally, they were all unfamiliar faces. Most importantly, all of them were at the level of the Lord of Heaven. Yi Tianyun was the only earthly monarch. If it wasn't for Elder Shao Tian's overbearing attitude, Yi Tianyun definitely wouldn't have participated. He wasn't interested in this in the first place, and he had already decided who would participate. If they wanted to participate, they had to be at least at the level of the Lord of Heaven. It wasn't that they were discriminating against earth monarchs, but that the Lord of Heaven's cultivation was more mature. Most importantly, the longer they stayed in the God Creation Palace, the more they could unleash their full potential. Thus, his appearance immediately became the focus of everyone's attention. Among so many Lord of Heaven, there was only one Earth monarch. This was truly shocking. There's actually an Earth monarch among the participants this time. His cultivation level is a bit vague, so I can't really tell what level he's at. That's right. It's actually an Earth monarch participating in the competition. This is incredible. Could it be that they have some shocking power? It looks like he's from the human race. That's strange. There's actually a human participating, and he's even an Earth monarch. This is truly puzzling. Everyone began to discuss. The original topic was about the God Creation Palace and who would be the one to emerge. Now, the topic of discussion had shifted to Yi Tianyun. Yi Tianyun's identity was special, and his cultivation was special. How could he not attract attention? This kid is finally here. I want to see what he can learn in the past few months, Elder Shao Tian said with a smile as soon as he saw Yi Tianyun on the stage. He felt that Yi Tianyun was truly an idiot, and Elder Dongyun was even more of an idiot. He really let Yi Tianyun participate. If Elder Dongyun didn't let Yi Tianyun participate, he didn't feel that there was any problem. He would rather embarrass Yi Tianyun than embarrass himself. This was a matter of the entire camp, but Elder Dongyun still sent Yi Tianyun. How could he not be an idiot? Master, this is the human that embarrassed you? A handsome youth at the side looked at Yi Tianyun with an extremely cold gaze. That's right. Not only did he defeat your junior brother, but he also embarrassed me. Elder Shao Tian gritted his teeth and said, in this competition, all of you have to perform well and make them lose even more miserably. Master, haven't they lost badly enough in the past? Shu Bo, Lord of Heaven's eyes were filled with mockery. Come to think of it, their results have always been rather average. I don't know where they got their luck this time, but they encountered two rather outstanding disciples. However, compared to all of you, they are still lacking. Elder Shao Tian sneered and said, no matter what, all of you have to suppress them ruthlessly in the competition. That's for sure. Not only do you have to suppress them, but you have to suppress the entire competition. They laugh. Their laughter was filled with confidence, as if they had some sort of secret weapon. While the crowd was discussing them, Yi Tianyun's expression was calm and he did not feel nervous at all. There was nothing to be nervous about. He did not care about how the others looked at him. After all, it was not a problem for him. He had long gotten used to it. Junior brother, don't be so nervous. Don't care about what they think. Just prove yourself later, Senior Sister Fiery Lotus comforted him. Senior Sister Fiery Lotus, it's fine. I won't be nervous. Yi Tianyun smiled. That's good. Just focus on the competition and ignore what the others say. Senior Sister Fiery Lotus nodded. That's right. Don't be nervous. Just perform your best. Senior brother Yulong also encouraged him. Yi Tianyun nodded and followed them to their respective camp. There was a fixed stove. The stove was basically fixed. There would not be any special stove, and they could not use their own stove. The only thing that could change was their own ability, which was their demon fire. The rest was basically fixed. For example, the materials would not change. After Elder Dongyun brought them to their respective seats, they sat at the side. They were not the hosts of the competition. Soon, Elder Go Huang and the others flew over and took their seats at the front. The most eye-catching seat in the center was still empty. Without a doubt, this was the seat of the territorial master. However, the territorial master had not appeared yet. No one knew when she would arrive. No one dared to complain about the territorial master. If it was known, it would be extremely disrespectful. Just as everyone was discussing when the territorial master would arrive, a crack suddenly appeared in the void. A beautiful figure steadily descended from the sky and finally appeared in front of everyone. Tianyun looked up and saw a faint blue lotus flower slowly descending from the sky. Her long skirt fluttered gently, blocking everyone's view. When she landed and sat on the chair in the center, Tianyun finally saw the person's appearance. It was a beautiful woman. She wore a light blue long skirt. Even her eyes were light blue. She looked like she was made of water. How stunning! Chapter 1144. This woman was the territorial lord. The territorial lord was actually a woman. Although it wasn't like there had never been a female domain lord before, it was still an extremely rare existence. In this world where men were superior to women, she must be very capable to be able to become the territorial lord. Otherwise, even if she was more talented than many people, she wouldn't have been able to sit in this position if her prestige wasn't strong enough. So this is the territorial lord. Tianyun's eyes lit up. He didn't expect it to be a woman. No wonder Elder Dong Yun said that the territorial lord was unmoved by force or persuasion. She was a strong woman, and it was obvious that she relied on her ability to make a living. If he wanted her to nod and agree, he must show his true ability, otherwise she wouldn't even bother with him. Azure Region Lord. Peak Divine Lord cultivation level, one step away from breaking through to the Heavenly Master level. Possesses the extremely rare Heavenly Water Holy Body, has a strong affinity with the water attribute, and has a special talent. Wears high-grade Heavenly Tao equipment and can burst out extremely strong power. Overall combat power is 30 million star power, normal state. 30 million star power. This combat power is really brutal. No wonder she became the territorial lord. When Tianyun saw this combat power, he couldn't help but gasp. Compared to the other elders, she was several streets ahead. However, he had seen many such strong women. For example, Bai Shui Huang and Yi Qingxian in the mortal realm were one of them, so it wasn't surprising. Only when one was strong to a certain level could they manage so many strong people, otherwise they wouldn't have a chance to rise. Azure Region Lord. Many elders got up and greeted her respectfully, including the disciples around them. They all stood up and didn't dare to sit down. This was their territorial lord. How could they not stand up? Some of the people who had never seen the region lord before were now able to see her face. Especially when they saw that the region lord was a woman, their imaginations ran wild. If someone could marry the domain lord, then that person would really have a meteoric rise. Well, sit down. Azure Region Lord nodded gently and gestured for everyone to sit down. Everyone sat down. After she sat down, she glanced at the many participants and finally stopped at Tianyun. Humans? Region Mistress Glaze was a little curious. She had seen so many competitions, but this was the first time she saw a human from the human race participating. It's even Earth Monarch Julian. This level is not bad. Interesting. Elder Go Huang stood up and explained, Lord Glazed Region Master, this is a new disciple who recently completed the Heavenly Sovereign's path and obtained the vast Heavenly Sovereign's legacy. Complete the Heavenly Sovereign path? In the light blue eyes of Region Master Glaze, there was a bit of surprise. The way of the Celestial Master? Some of us have finished walking here? This was a pleasant surprise. Who would have thought that a human would be the one to complete it? How surprising! No wonder they sent him up at the earthly monarch realm. If he didn't have some ability, he wouldn't have sent him up. Elder Go Huang was embarrassed and didn't know how to answer her. Elder Go Huang couldn't possibly say that he was forced by Elder Xiao Tian, could he? Yes, we are looking forward to his performance. Elder Go Huang smiled awkwardly. Region Master Glaze nodded her head lightly and didn't say anything else. She continued to look around to see if there were any newcomers. After looking around, she nodded her head lightly and said, "The tournament of God's Palace that is held once every 100 years is to select outstanding newcomers and focus on nurturing them. In the blink of an eye, 100 years has passed. Now, it's time for you newcomers to show your skills. I hope you won't disappoint me." "We will definitely not disappoint Region Master Glaze." One by one, they shouted excitedly. How could they not be excited to be able to perform in front of the Region Master? If the Region Master Glaze took a liking to them, they would really explode. This kind of thing wasn't unheard of. Previously, the Region Master Glaze took a fancy to a decent disciple and brought him to train. Soon after, he became an elder. The Region Master Glaze nodded her head and smiled faintly. "Before the assessment, I will roughly explain the rewards this time. The top 3 will receive a personal guidance from me once. At the same time, I will fulfill a small request of yours. For example, if you want a martial art, a treasure, or to go to the Heaven Sacred Ground for training, there won't be any problems." Everyone's eyes lit up. The Region Master Glaze's reward was really generous. Apart from guidance, there was also a small request. The request could be imagined by themselves. The example was already very tempting. This kind of reward that wasn't explicitly mentioned was even more tempting. The group of participants were all excited. At least 3 of them would be able to get it. If there was only one, it would be very difficult to fight for it. Then let's prepare for the assessment. The Region Master Glaze's expression didn't change at all. She looked very calm. The content of the assessment will be different every time. Generally speaking, there will only be 3 stages. Each time, the results will be determined by the score. The lowest score will be 0, and the highest will be 10. As for the evaluators, this time, I will let the elders of the Palace of God's Palace evaluate. I will not participate in any score evaluation. When this suggestion was made, everyone was shocked. There was such a scoring method. One had to know that the elders of the Palace of God's Palace viewed each other as enemies. There were many who formed alliances with each other, but there were more who viewed each other as enemies. For example, Elder Xiao Tian and Elder Dong Yun viewed each other as enemies. If Elder Xiao Tian were to evaluate Tianyun and the rest, he might give them an unfair score of 1 or even 0. Of course, I hope that everyone will treat this fairly. If you want to give such a score, you have to give a corresponding reason. If you judge randomly, I think you will know the result. While everyone was discussing, the Region Master Glaze added another sentence. This caused some of the elders who were planning to give their opponents low scores to wipe off their cold sweat. The Region Master Glaze didn't finish her sentence, but it made their hearts beat faster. It's all right. If it was Elder Xiao Tian, he would definitely give us a low score. Yulong Lord of Heaven heaved a sigh of relief. If they gave random scores, they would definitely be finished. But this Region Master Glaze is really beautiful. Huolian Lord of Heaven wasn't concerned about the competition, but about the Region Master Glaze. She is indeed beautiful, but the most important thing is that she can control an area. As a female, she can stand above so many powerhouses. This is her most eye-catching aspect, Tianyun commented from the side. Huolian Lord of Heaven's eyes lit up. She grabbed Tianyun's arm and said excitedly, "Little junior brother, you've touched my heart. She is the role model for us female cultivators. All along, we female cultivators have had a low status. Region Master Glaze is our role model. Don't worry, Senior Sister Huolian, you will also have a place in the future." Tianyun smiled. Chapter 1145. The Region Mistress Colored Glaze did not elaborate on the rules. She simply handed the assessment over to the elders of the Palace of Gods for them to assess. Other than not being able to assess their own disciples, they were allowed to assess everything else. The final average of the scores would be their scores. It could be said that every camp had 7 judges, and the scores would be determined by them. The rules are as such. I will not participate in any assessment. After all, I don't know how to forge any weapons, so it's not up to me to assess. Although I was the one who decided in the past, I've decided to let the elders decide this time. There are some changes this time, so I'll inform the elders in advance. This was the first time the region mistress colored glaze made a change. In the past, she was the one who determined the scores of the participants. However, her judgment was not bad, and she was able to determine whose weapon was better. However, there was a change this time. Region Mistress Colored Glaze, may I know why you have changed? Elder Go Huang was curious. I just feel that it's better to change some things, especially the assessment content that I've decided on. There will be major changes compared to the previous years. Hence, I need the assistance of the elders, or else it will be difficult to assess. Region Mistress Colored Glaze revealed her true thoughts. The changes were too drastic, and she needed the help of the elders. Many of the participants stared. Could it be that the assessment this time would be more insane? I see. Then we'll be looking forward to the assessment from Region Mistress Colored Glaze. The content of every assessment is always amazing. Elder Go Huang praised from the side. The other elders agreed one after another. It was not bootlicking, but the topic set by Region Mistress Colored Glaze was really good and amazing. The most important thing was that it would be of great help to the assessment, as it could test everyone's standards. When the participants heard this, they felt a little uneasy. Who knew what kind of weird thing the Region Mistress Colored Glaze would do this time? Region Mistress Colored Glaze smiled and looked at the elders. Then I'll leave it to the elders of the Palace of Gods. We don't deserve it, we don't deserve it. We're more than happy to help. The elders of the Palace of Gods responded one after another. They all knew Region Mistress Colored Glaze's capabilities, so they were naturally willing to help and had no objections. Region Mistress Colored Glaze looked at the participants and said loudly, "Before the assessment begins, I'll state a simple rule. Do not interfere with each other. Everything will be based on your own abilities. If you violate this rule, you'll be sentenced to 10,000 years in the Reflection Tower." This was really harsh. Sentenced to 10,000 years in the Reflection Tower. How could they not go crazy? Of course, this was still considered good. At least it wasn't a direct death sentence. That would be truly severe. Everyone nodded. During the competition, they naturally couldn't interfere with each other. Although they were competitors, they absolutely could not interfere with each other. This was the range rule. This was not a martial arts competition. There was no need to interfere with each other. There was no need for that. Mistress Colored Glaze Colored, not. Region Mistress Colored, white. Glaze quickly. Mistress, Colored to not. Quick of eyes and that the tutu they said Colored Glaze swift to hands. With eyes. As B said, he to be the mistress to say, to Colored when they received the iron, they realized that they were just ordinary iron, similar to Fan Yu's ordinary dark steel. They could be found everywhere and were not worth much. They were similar to the stones outside. This time, Region Mistress Colored had thrown the iron. Could it be used as a forging material? Tianyun took the iron and looked around carefully. It was indeed ordinary dark steel. There was not a single bright spot. This is the question? Tianyun squinted his eyes and looked at the dark steel around him. He did not know what the Region Mistress Colored. He did not know what question the Region Mistress Colored would give, but judging from the dark steel, it was definitely not an easy question. But thinking about it, if it were too easy, there would be no point in setting a question. Of course, the more difficult the better. Only then would they be able to see their standard. All of you have received the dark steel, right? How long has it been since you last saw it? Region Mistress Colored looked at them and asked plainly. Everyone looked at each other awkwardly. Some of them had only glanced at it, and some had not even seen it before. How could they have seen such a piece of scrap iron? Most of the people present had grown up with a silver spoon in their mouth. They had never touched a piece of trash material like dark steel. At most, they had seen it. Of course, it did not mean that they did not know how to refine equipment. Since the materials were similar, there would not be a problem if the technique was strong. I believe many of you have not seen it before. Or perhaps you have seen it but have never touched it before. Region Mistress Colored said plainly, this time, the question is this dark steel. I know that none of you have used it before, but I will use something that none of you have used as a test topic. Of course, I know that some of you know about it, but this does not affect the fairness. After all, even if you have not used it before, you will be able to make use of it after some experimentation. This is your most basic foundation. If you don't even have this foundation, then don't bother staying in the palace of gods. Everyone's eyes turned solemn. These words were indeed true. Even if it was a stone, they would refine it into gold. After all, just because they could not do it didn't mean that others could not. This round's question is very normal. You will simply use this dark steel as the foundation and combine it with other materials to refine a weapon. The higher the grade, the higher the score. Let me first say that it is not simply adding dark steel into the materials, but using dark steel as the main material. If the weapon refined in the end does not have dark steel as the main material, then the score will be invalid. If they were to simply use dark steel to refine a weapon, even if the elders of the Palace of Gods were to refine it, they would not be able to refine a weapon of high quality. Therefore, materials had to be added, but the addition of materials was also very particular. Not all materials could be added to increase the grade crazily. Dark steel itself had a limited capacity. If some materials were to be smashed in, it would directly cause the dark steel to explode. It was unable to contain these overbearing materials, or it would be dominated by other ferocious materials. For example, adding in ore of a higher grade would immediately take over the position of dark steel. Dark steel would be reduced to a supporting role, and it would undoubtedly not receive any point. If it was refined in this way, the question set by Region Mistress Colored Glaze would naturally be meaningless. She wanted to refine as many high-grade materials as possible on this fragile piece of iron. This was a test of their control of fire, their knowledge of materials, and their research on fusion. It was a comprehensive test. With such a difficult question in the first round, everyone felt pressured. Interesting. The question set by Region Mistress Colored Glaze is indeed a little difficult. Tianyun grabbed onto the dark steel and revealed a smile. This was not difficult for him at all. Chapter 1146. The fragility of dark steel was a headache for many participants. They could only try to find out how to refine it to the best effect. Looking at the participants' headaches, Glazed Region Mistress smiled brightly, as if this was the happiest thing for her. That's the general rules. Since few of you have touched the materials, you'll have more time. Half a month, Glazed Region Mistress continued. Everyone nodded. Half a month was enough for them to try. Since they were using the most common materials, the difficulty of refining was relatively low. What they needed to do was to try to fuse the materials to maximize the effects of dark steel. Little junior brother, you must do your best. Senior sister Fire Lotus nodded at Tianyun to encourage him. Tianyun nodded with a smile. He felt very warm in the face of their concern. At least they were not scheming against him. Not long after, the test began. Many participants immediately took out dark steel and began refining. They melted the dark steel again and again, then threw in materials of high quality to fuse and began to forge. Boom, boom, boom. It was just the beginning. Immediately, there were sounds of explosions, which meant that someone had directly exploded. The material of dark steel was too fragile. Randomly smashing rough materials would naturally cause an explosion. That participant's face was covered in dust. However, these were all small explosions, so there was no problem. It was just that it was really embarrassing to refine and explode in front of so many people. But no one would laugh at him. During this time, no one would have the time to laugh at others. They all knew that they could be the next person to refine and explode. If they wanted to try to match the perfect materials, they would need to refine more. It was very likely that they would also refine and explode. After all, they needed to test the true limits of dark steel. Only when they were stuck at the limit could they accommodate more precious materials in the limited space. Tianyun calmly took out a lot of black iron, instead of trying it piece by piece. He doesn't need to do that. From the beginning, he knew the limits of dark steel. Don't forget that in order to upgrade, he had refined many beginner materials. How could he not know the situation of dark steel? Only these geniuses who grew up with a golden spoon in their mouths would not know the situation of dark steel. They needed to slowly explore it. Under everyone's gaze, Tianyun was rapidly refining the materials. A large pile of dark steel was quickly melted into molten iron. Following that, he began to throw materials into it continuously. Due to the speed of his movements, most people could not tell what it was. Of course, even if he could see through it, he couldn't imitate it. Although the rules didn't say that one couldn't plagiarize someone else's work, whoever did so would definitely be fiercely despised. This meant that one's own ability was not good enough, and it was really embarrassing to copy someone else's refining method. The rules were not stated, but the elders would definitely give them low marks. The audience was shocked to see Tianyun throw in the materials so boldly. Aren't they afraid of exploding with such a violent method? This kid's refining method is really rough. Elder Dong-yun shook his head. He could only hope that Tianyun could win this round. Because it was rather rough, the colored glaze region master quickly noticed that Tianyun was the only one who could be as rough as him. It could be said that he was extremely courageous. The materials that he threw in were also extremely rough. The materials that were thrown in were also of a high grade. However, when they were thrown in, they did not explode. Instead, they fused perfectly. Although the compatibility of the materials thrown in with the dark steel is average, they can cancel out the rough effects and fuse with the dark steel with a neutral effect. It seems like he is quite familiar with the control of materials, colored glaze region master commented from the side. She didn't know how to refine equipment, but that didn't mean she knew nothing. After hosting the God Creation Palace tournament for so many times, if she didn't even know this, she might as well go bang her head against the wall. Yes, it seems like he is quite familiar with the control of the Darksteel's materials, Elder Go Huang added. Tell me about his background. Colored Glaze Region Master was a little interested in Tianyun. He came from Fan Yu and joined the first grade God Realm. In the end, he joined our Heavenly Spring God Realm after participating in the God Realm Ascension Battle. Elder Go Huang thought for a while and added, it can be said that he climbed up from the bottom of Fan Yu. No wonder he is so familiar with the dark steel. So he is a cultivator from Fan Yu. To be able to climb from a human cultivator from Fan Yu to a Julian Earth Monarch, this is really unimaginable. Colored Glaze Region Master nodded. There was no discrimination in her eyes, but instead, there was a little more respect. It was not easy for him to climb up from Fan Yu to such a high level. With such a low starting point, to be able to reach such a level, how could people not be impressed? Following that, Tianyun threw materials again and again. After throwing more than a dozen materials in a row, he stopped and stopped throwing materials in. After fusing into one, a ball of liquid floated in the air. Then, he threw the ball of liquid in the air onto the iron plate in front of him. Then, he started hammering the liquid crazily, starting the final refinement. His skillful technique made the audience nod in approval. They felt that it was not bad. At least he would not fall behind the other participants because his cultivation was lower. Very quickly, under his crazy hammering, a long sword was forged. This kind of rough technique was usually used to forge giant swords and axes. Who would have thought that it would be used to forge a long sword this time? It was really surprising. Dang! With one last heavy punch, Yi Tianyun completely forged the long sword. There was no special luster on the surface, and it completely retained the original dark steel. It was simple and unadorned, and everything seemed very low-key. But under this low-key surface, it was actually a lower-grade reincarnation-level weapon. To be able to forge a lower-grade reincarnation-level weapon with dark steel as the main material, the difficulty of forging was definitely not low. It's done. Yi Tianyun looked up at Colored Glaze Region Master and said, "Colored Glaze Region Master, I have successfully forged it." Everyone was shocked. They thought that Yi Tianyun was just trying it first, and then he would continue to forge a second one to see if he could bring out a higher grade. Who would have thought that he would immediately decide that this weapon would be used for the competition? The elders' hearts sank. They did not expect that Yi Tianyun would be so casual. He was not even willing to try it and directly handed it over. After all, handing it over in advance would not give him any bonus points. It was what it should be. Chapter 1147. Naturally, Yi Tianyun did not choose to be the first to attract attention. It was because he had a deep understanding of meteoric iron. Since that was the case, there was no need to continue trying. No matter how hard he tried, the standard would be the same, unless he used a stronger flame. In his opinion, he had already reached his limit, and it would be difficult for him to improve further. As for what others thought, it was their business. Yi Tianyun felt that he had tried his best. He even felt that others would not be able to surpass his level. In the end, this was the highest standard weapon that could be forged from meteoric iron. Unless the proportion of meteoric iron was reduced, it would be difficult to increase the grade. Only one try? Elder Go Huang frowned slightly. He felt that Yi Tianyun was too careless and not serious enough. Everyone else had been trying, but Yi Tianyun only one try was enough. It was truly puzzling. Once is enough. If one has a deeper understanding of the material, one try is enough. Region Mistress Colored Glaze had a different opinion. At the same time, she gestured for the elders of Godcraft's palace to check. Every mission should be checked immediately. Although there were not many participants, they were all done. Naturally, they were checked first. Following that, the 7 elders gathered around. Elder Dong Yun could not participate in the grading, and could only watch from the side. Elder Xiao Tian took the lead and arrived in front of Yi Tianyun. He picked up the long sword and checked it a little, then he flicked it lightly. OM! The whole long sword vibrated slightly. The forging standard is not bad, but the grade is a little low. You spent so many materials to achieve a low-grade rebirth grade weapon? Elder Xiao Tian looked at Yi Tianyun and said indifferently, I feel that it can be a little higher. It's not the ultimate standard, so I will only give 5 points. We also feel that the grade is a little low. I feel that it can at least reach the level of a middle-grade rebirth grade weapon. Low-grade rebirth grade is too low. I will also give 5 points. The materials and the forging are quite harmonious. The forging technique is passable, but the grade is too low. I will give 5 points. Each of them gave a low score. The highest score was only 6 points, and the lowest was 5 points, which was considered a passing score. Elder Xiao Tian was extremely biased against Yi Tianyun, but he would still give an appropriate score. Liuli Region Master was watching from the side. How could he dare to give a 0 directly? He would definitely be scolded to death. No matter how bad it was impossible to get 0 points, unless it was a failure. Bullshit. At this moment, Elder Eastcloud roared furiously from the side, what grade can be even higher? When dark steel is the dominant material, if you want to break through to a higher limit, You don't just need a stronger flame. What's more important is extremely rare materials. Currently, the materials provided were not at the level of being rare. The weapons forged by Heavenly Cloud Earth Monarch could be considered to be at the limit. I'm not satisfied with only 5 points. Elder Dong Yun jumped out at this moment. He was really dissatisfied with this score. Elder Dong Yun, what do you mean by that? Do you think we're not professional enough? Do you think that we can't even determine the limit of profound iron? Elder Xiao Tian said in a deep voice. The other 6 people looked at Elder Dong Yun one after another with dissatisfied expressions. They weren't bribed by Elder Xiao Tian. They were only saying what they wanted to say. That's right. Let me ask you, do you understand profound iron? Elder Dong Yun said sternly, I don't think you've touched it before. Most of the participants here have never touched it before. You simply don't know the limit. I've touched it before. Although I don't have a deep understanding, the level of Heavenly Cloud Earth Monarch's refinement is definitely not low. Elder Xiao Tian and the others were indeed hit where it hurt. They really didn't have a detailed understanding of profound iron. They only had a slight understanding of the situation from observation. For example, they had a rough understanding from Yi Tianyun's refinement. They all felt that it could be a step higher. Are you the one giving the score now, or are we? Elder Xiao Tian retorted coldly. He couldn't be bothered to argue with Elder Dong Yun. He directly pointed out the biggest problem, and that was that the one giving the score wasn't Elder Dong Yun. Elder Dong Yun was momentarily speechless. It wasn't his turn to give the score now. Interrupting was also against the rules. They all looked at Region Lord Glaze, wanting to see what she had to say. Elder Dong Yun, if you want to give an evaluation, you can do so when the next participant comes, Region Lord Glaze said. Region Lord Glaze's words meant that Elder Dong Yun shouldn't interrupt. He could just watch from the side. After all, there were rules. Elder Dong Yun could only remain silent. Elder Xiao Tian had a triumphant expression on his face. He had finally turned the tables here. Yi Tianyun watched coldly from the side. He didn't retort at all. He just stood where he was. Everyone's gazes were filled with mockery. They didn't expect him to be so tragic. He looked very powerful, but he ended up with a low score in the end. Shortly after, Yi Tianyun sat down and meditated. His score had already been evaluated. It was only an average of 5 points. It was simply too low. Shui, Lord of Heaven, and the others in Elder Dong Yun's camp all felt that it was a pity. Why did he get such a low score? It looked like his performance was alright. Why was his score so low? They were all very unhappy, but they could only accept their fate. Along with the mocking gazes, explosions soon occurred one after another, attracting everyone's attention. They failed one after another. It was already good enough that they didn't explode, not to mention succeeding. As time passed, the explosions became fewer and fewer. They were getting more and more comfortable with refining. However, everyone was surprised to find a huge problem. No matter how they refined, the grade was lower than the low-grade rebirth grade. In other words, weapons of Fan Yu's grade could not be upgraded to the high grade that Yi Tianyun had refined. The 7 elders who had given the evaluation before now felt incomparably awkward. Could it be that they were really wrong? More than half of the time had passed. The weapons they refined were getting better and better. However, none of them could reach the low-grade rebirth grade. Along with a sound, someone had successfully refined a low-grade rebirth grade weapon. This gave them hope. However, they were soon disappointed. The participants who had successfully refined a low-grade reincarnation grade weapon couldn't increase their grade no matter how hard they tried. Again and again, the level of the refinement was still firmly locked at the low-grade reincarnation level. It could not advance to the next level. This was still not bad. Among the 24 participants, only a few had successfully refined low-grade rebirth grade weapons. Most of them were stuck at Fan Yu's grade. This was an extremely awkward question. Tianyun, who was meditating at the side, didn't need to retort. The score they gave was equivalent to a slap on their faces. Chapter 1148. The duration of the competition was getting shorter and shorter. Currently, there were less than 7 people who could successfully refine a low-grade reincarnation weapon. Tianyun was one of them. Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven was another. Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven had yet to refine a high-grade reincarnation weapon and was still working on it. All of them were sweating profusely. It was several times more difficult than refining a high-grade reincarnation weapon. Most of them were still at the divine artifact level. However, they were not called divine artifacts in the divine realm. Instead, they were called star artifacts and were considered ordinary weapons. All of them were prodigies, but they could not even compare to Tianyun, who had been ridiculed previously. At most, they could only refine a star artifact. Previously, the other participants had looked at Tianyun and felt that Tianyun was very ridiculous. Now, it seemed that they were the ones who were being ridiculed. They did not even have the qualifications to ridicule Tianyun. They were all stuck at the star artifact level and could not refine it no matter how hard they tried. As a result, they were sweating profusely. They did not have high expectations now. They only hoped that they could refine a low-grade reincarnation weapon. That was enough. Ha ha ha, those participants can only refine a star artifact. Little junior brother is not the worst. In fact, he can be said to be the best. That's right. I thought little junior brother had no chance of winning. Now, it seems that little junior brother is very confident. Elder East Cloud revealed a smile at the side. He looked at Elder Xiao Tian with an ugly expression. The highest score they had given was 6 points. This meant that if they were to use this as a grading system, they would not even be able to reach 4 points. They felt extremely embarrassed when they thought of what they had said previously. They had thought that they could refine a higher grade. Who knew that the highest grade they could refine now was the low-grade reincarnation weapon? What mid-grade reincarnation weapon? Elder Xiao Tian gritted his teeth and shouted, "What are you all doing? Hurry up and refine a higher-grade weapon for me." He was now urging his disciples to refine a higher-grade weapon. However, Shu Bo Lord of Heaven was sweating profusely. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. This mysterious iron is really trash. It is even worse than a rock. This disciple has already tried his best to refine a higher-level one, but I'm still unable to do it. The difficulty is too high. Shu Bo Lord of Heaven was already at his limit, unless he was given a little more time. However, in such a short amount of time, he really couldn't refine anything of a higher level. Elder Xiao Tian was about to explode from anger. He did not expect the difficulty to be so high. Furthermore, Tianyun had succeeded on the first try. It was obvious that he was more familiar with dark steel. That was why he could forge it so quickly. Damn it, how could this be? Elder Xiao Tian's expression was extremely unsightly, and the other elders weren't any better. This was like slapping their own faces. They could either bite the bullet and continue to beat the score, or they could change the score again. But if he changed the score again, wouldn't that be admitting his mistake? For a moment, many of the elders were thinking about how to answer the question. Elder East Cloud laughed from the side. Let's see what they had to say. They were definitely in a difficult position now. Soon, someone successfully refined it and let the elders grade it. This was already their limit, so they could only let the elders grade it. Elders, how do you grade this weapon? Elder East Cloud looked at them with a face full of sarcasm. Many of the elders had awkward expressions. This was the second person besides Tianyun for them to grade. They wouldn't let the elders grade it until the end. After all, they didn't know how high the grade they could refine until the end. Who knew if they would be able to refine a higher grade weapon in the end and get a higher score? Who knew how to refine it? It was still the same grade. There was no change. This proved that refining weapons with dark steel was really too difficult. It was simply a nightmare. Since it's a star tool, 3 points will be given. Elder Shao Tian braced himself and gave a score. He did not want to be slapped in the face. He would rather stubbornly insist on a higher grade than give a higher score. His face would be slapped swollen. This was a matter of face. They would never admit it no matter what. Yes. The grade is too low. We will also only give 3 points. All of them chose to lie through their teeth. Face was still more important. They were dignified elders, and there were so many people watching, including the region lord of Glaze region. They couldn't lose face no matter what. 3 points. Elder Dong Yun coldly snorted and said, "Looks like Elder Shao Tian's standards are really high. It seems that if I want to obtain high points, I'll have to refine Darksteel into a high-grade reincarnation grade weapon at the very least. Only then will I be able to obtain 8 or 9 points. Or maybe it has to be at the Heaven Path grade to get full marks." He didn't mind being slapped in the face, especially since Elder Shao Tian had just refuted him. Now it was his turn to get back at him. Elder Shao Tian stiffened his neck and said, "That's right. Even if it's dark steel, one can still refine an upper-grade reincarnation grade weapon. We must treat it strictly." "That's amazing. Now, Elder Shao Tian, why don't you demonstrate and see if you can refine an upper-grade reincarnation grade weapon with these materials?" Elder Eastcloud sneered. They provided the various participants with materials and didn't need to bring their own materials to ensure fairness. If someone were to take out extremely rare materials and throw them in, it would no longer be a competition of strength, but a competition of who had the wealthiest family background. Elder Shao Tian's face darkened. Although he knew that he was rather capable, seeing the current situation, he knew that even the cleverest housewife couldn't cook a meal without rice. Without better materials, it was impossible to refine a high-grade weapon. Unless it was an extremely heaven-defying technique, such as triggering a heaven tribulation to refine the weapon, it was no longer within their scope. Speechless, right? You can't even refine it yourself, yet you give such a score. What a joke. Elder Eastcloud swung his hand and retorted without holding back. It was as though he was trying to beat them to death. It was as though Elder Shao Tian had killed his father, and his words were extremely vicious. It wasn't that Elder Eastcloud had a vicious mouth, but that Elder Shao Tian was the first to be heartless. Therefore, he couldn't be blamed for being unjust. "Elder Shao Tian, is there such a thing?" Region Lord Glaze looked at them with interest. The Go Huang elders by the side shook their heads. How could they not know the internal situation of the gods' forging palace? The relationship was extremely chaotic, and it was time to rectify it. However, they weren't too sure how to rectify it. "No, it's not like that. I feel that I can at least refine a middle-grade reincarnation grade weapon. That's why I gave such a score." Elder Shao Tian's tone softened. "A difference of 5 points between a middle-grade and a lower-grade weapon. This score is really strict." Elder Eastcloud snorted. From his point of view, even if he could refine a middle-grade weapon, he would at least give a score of 7, not 5. Chapter 1149. Elder Dong Yun's sarcasm made Elder Shao Tian's expression turn uglier and uglier, but he could not retort. As long as one was not a fool, one could see the problem. Everything could be attributed to one point, which was that they had been too rash and overestimated the extreme effects of the meteoric iron. Although they were elders, it did not mean that they could see the limit every time. They had to refine it a little to know its general abilities. Tianyun had refined it before, and with the appraisal eye, there was no need to continue testing. Just one time was enough, and not too many were needed. Elder Dong Yun, the difference between inferior grade and intermediate grade is like the difference between heaven and earth. It's normal to give low scores. We are all using this as the standard now, and we are not biased. Elder Shao Tian stubbornly retorted. He would not back down and say that he had judged wrongly. If that's the case, then that's about it, Elder Go Huang persuaded from the side. He knew that there would be no result if they continued arguing, so he could only stand up and say a few words. Since Elder Go Huang has said so, then I have nothing else to say. You can rate well then. Elder Dong Yun swung his sleeves and snorted coldly, still feeling very displeased. Following Elder Shao Tian, they could only bite the bullet and give low scores one after the other. In the end, some people only got 2 points, which was even more miserable and pitiful. Although everyone gave their scores this way, it seemed that the scores were really embarrassing. To outsiders, this group of people were all trash. The highest score was only 5 or 6, and there were not even 8 or 9. Were the geniuses of the God Creation Palace all handicapped geniuses? Internally, they knew the reason, but they were just unwilling to say it. This batch of contestants is really bad. They can't even reach more than half of the Elder's requirement. That's right. I don't know if their talent is too bad, or if their teaching is too bad, but their scores are so low. That's right. They are much worse than before. They didn't even refine the results the Elders wanted. In an instant, everyone started discussing. The discussions of the Spear Palace and the other god palaces were so noisy that they could hear them. Each word was worse than the last, making Elder Shao Tian and the rest feel ashamed. They wanted to dig a hole and hide in it. But if he said it, he had to keep it to himself even if he had to kneel. Soon, the scores were all evaluated. Tianyun was the one with the highest score, tied with the others. Since he was the first to make it, everyone had a whole new level of respect for him. Even the glazed region master took a second look at him. She had some expectations for him. Region Lord Valurium, the scores have been evaluated. Elder Shao Tian and the others stood in front of Region Lord Valurium with their heads lowered. Only Elder Dong Yun raised his head. Elder East Cloud had a clear conscience and knew the situation. Naturally, he was not afraid to look Glazed Region Lord in the eye. Yes, the performance of the contestants this time is not bad. Most of the contestants have never touched Darksteel before, but they are still able to forge such a good weapon. They are still very outstanding. Area Master Colored Glaze didn't say anything wrong about the Elders. Instead, he praised the contestants. Although Liuli Region Lord was not a professional, she still knew the situation. There was no need to talk about the scheming of the Elders, but in his opinion, the performance of these participants was still worthy of recognition. That's for sure. Our disciples are all very outstanding, Elder Shao Tian hurriedly said. Elder Shao Tian hurriedly said. If his disciples performed poorly and made the Glazed Region Lord unhappy, then they would definitely have to bear the consequences. I am naturally aware of this. All of your performances are not bad. I won't say anything else. Area Lord Valurium had some ability, but some things couldn't be too forceful. Moreover, Elder Go Huang and the others would handle it. She didn't need to do everything herself. If she did everything herself, why would she need Elder Go Huang and the others? Although they were all called elders, there were only a few of them who were truly of high rank. Among them, Elder Go Huang was the highest. He could be called by his full name, or as the Great Elder. As the Great Elder, he could be said to be the most powerful existence under the Region Lord Valurium. Who would dare to disobey him? Following that, all the elders nodded and didn't say anything else. Now that things had come to this, what else could they say? Shortly after, they all returned to their respective camps and prepared to proceed to the next round. This round didn't create a particularly large gap. The main reason was that the score was too low. Otherwise, Tianyun would definitely be able to create a huge gap. Tianyun didn't have any complaints. These things weren't something he could control. He just needed to do his own assessment on the side. This time, Lord Tianyun's performance was not bad. It could be said that he let me vent my anger. Elder Dong Yun thought of how Elder Xiao Tian had suffered a setback just now and felt very satisfied. That's right. Little junior brother's understanding of mysterious iron is quite deep. He was able to forge it in such a short time. I tried many times before I could barely reach the level of low-grade reincarnation grade. Flaming Lotus Lord of Heaven shook his head. He really wiped off his cold sweat for almost falling behind. That's right. The difficulty was really high. I almost couldn't complete it. Yulong Lord of Heaven nodded his head and wiped off his sweat. I almost couldn't complete it. I needed to study for a long time at the beginning. I was just lucky. I encountered a problem that I've seen before. Otherwise, I really wouldn't have been able to complete it. Tianyun smiled modestly. Luck is also a type of strength. This is called being experienced and knowledgeable. Elder Dong Yun smiled. I heard that you came from Fan Yu. No wonder you are so familiar with Fan Yu's materials. Experienced and knowledgeable? What's so great about some low-grade materials? Elder Xiao Tian mocked from the side. Since their camps were closer, Elder Xiao Tian naturally heard their conversation. He couldn't help but mock them from the side. Are you talking about Region Lord Valurium's problem? Elder Dong Yun snorted coldly and threw out a sentence to shut Elder Xiao Tian up. Elder Xiao Tian was speechless. If he continued, it would be tantamount to saying that the colored glaze Region Lord was at fault. At that time, he really wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. I can't be bothered to argue with you. Let's see how the next round goes. Elder Xiao Tian looked at Tianyun and sneered. I hope your luck is so good in every round that you encounter Fan Yu's materials. After Elder Xiao Tian left, they all felt extremely displeased. Little junior brother, don't mind that guy's words. You can still take the lead in the next round. Flaming Lotus Lord of Heaven said. I will. Tianyun of course didn't care about Elder Xiao Tian's words. He never cared about these people. They were all jealous people. Why should he care about them? Chapter 1150. The first round of the competition was finally over. Many people were very interested in the second round of the Glaze Region Master. They didn't know what kind of questions the Region Master would give. In the eyes of the audience, the more abnormal the better. It was to make the competition more interesting. Especially in the first round, a black iron made everyone refine and explode. It was an extremely rare thing to see normally, but it made these geniuses feel embarrassed. It proved that there was always someone better, and they still had a lot to learn. Otherwise, they would refine and explode like before. This was based on the fact that the materials were relatively common. If the materials were rare, the refining failure would represent a great loss. Therefore, eyesight was especially important. They must not make a mistake, otherwise it would be a failure. If they failed, it would be fine. They were afraid that a serious explosion would directly blow them away. At that time, not only would the weapon be damaged, but the person would also have to recuperate for a long time. The first round of the competition is over. All the contestants are very outstanding and did not disappoint my expectations. I believe that everyone has seen that they failed many times, but in a short time, they still refined a good weapon. I believe that if they were given a little more time, they would be able to refine a better grade. In this round, I am testing the contestants' adaptability and familiarity with the materials. Everyone may think that they failed many times, but in fact, their performance has exceeded my expectations. Therefore, everyone should not feel that they have failed. In fact, relatively speaking, their performance is already very good. The Region Master did not directly scold them, but praised them. She did not think that the contestants' ability was poor, but rather, they were not bad. Then, let's start the second round of the competition. I believe that everyone has been waiting for a long time. The words of the Region Master made the hearts of many contestants jump. Finally, the second round was coming. Many people wanted to make a comeback in the second round. The score difference was too small. If they did not pull away, it would be difficult to fight into the top 3. The top 3 were the highest honor and could enjoy good reward. The audience was even more excited. They felt that a good show was coming. The region master's questions were often unexpected, which made it interesting. In this round, I will let you refine pills, the region master said. Refine pills? Many of the contestants were dumbfounded, wondering if they had heard wrong. It was actually alchemy. Region Lord Colored Glaze, this round is alchemy? The contestant in the front row braced himself and asked. The other elders suspected that they had heard wrongly. They were from the Palace of Gods, and they specialized in forging weapons. Why were they refining pills? Although the two were both refined using flames, there was a huge difference between them. They weren't even on the same level. That's right. Did Lord Azure Glaze make a mistake with the question? Elder Go Huang stood up and asked. They wondered if they had heard wrongly. There were people from the Alchemy Palace among the audience. When they heard the question, they were dumbfounded. Was this a question for them? Very quickly, the glazed region lord shook his head and said, There's no mistake, it's refining pills. This alchemy doesn't require you to refine a high-grade pill. It just wants to see what grade of pill you can refine. These are the materials. With your abilities, you can refine as high a grade as you want. Everything will be judged by the grade of the pill you refine. A large pile of materials had already been prepared by the side. Basically, the materials for Fan U grade pills to God level pills were placed there for the contestants to choose from. However, they didn't give out any precious materials. After all, they were all disciples of the Palace of Gods, and their ability to refine pills was basically zero. All along, those who could forge basically didn't know how to refine pills. Those who could refine pills basically didn't know how to refine weapons. When they said that they didn't know how to refine pills, it didn't mean that they didn't know how to refine at all. It was just that they only knew a part of it and not particularly deep. The two were not on the same level. Being able to cultivate one of them to a decent level was already very good. As for cultivating both to an extremely high level, the amount of effort needed was astonishing. It was difficult for most people to reach this step. Of course, not being able to reach this step didn't mean that they didn't have it. In the end, there were still a few people who could reach this step. The glazed region lord was now trying to unearth their potential and see if one of them could produce a super genius who could refine 2 items. It's over. I basically don't know how to refine pills. I know a little about the easier ones, but I don't know anything about the more difficult ones. Yulong Lord of Heaven was on the verge of crying. Who knew that there would be such an insane question? It was an insane question that had never appeared before. I know a little, but not a lot. Flaming Lotus Lord of Heaven was also frowning. Not only the two of them, but the others were also frowning. They put all their energy into forging weapons. How would they have extra energy to spend on refining pills? Therefore, when they heard this question, they all suspected that they had heard wrongly, or that the glazed region lord had made a mistake with the question. As it turned out, there was no mistake with the question. Tianyun was on the verge of laughing out loud. There was nothing to be tested on, but they actually tested on refining pills. Although his level of refining pills was not very high, he was definitely much higher than all the participants present. That's right, he was a whole lot taller than them, leaving them several streets behind. It could be said that they were too far behind to catch up. The glazed region lord did not make a mistake with the question. The mistake was that she thought that she could test the participants ruthlessly, but in reality, she was giving Tianyun a great opportunity to surpass them. The second round has a higher limit of 20 points. This means that the higher the grade you obtain, the higher the point. This way, you will be able to widen the gap. As for the judges, they will be judged by the elders of the Elixir Refinery Palace. The glazed region lord's words were final. The other elders did not know whether to laugh or cry, but they had no other choice. The elders of the Elixir Refinery Palace joined in one after another. It was originally a special event for the Temple of Gods, but now even the Elixir Refinery Palace joined in. Originally, the Elixir Refinery Palace and the Temple of Gods were like fire and water. The reason was simple: they were fighting for people. Both of them were similar in nature. They both needed to possess decent flames to be able to join. Therefore, those who possessed decent flames would request to join. Now that they had joined the battle, the elders of both parties were hostile toward each other. They were not on good terms with each other. Initially, the elders of the Temple of Gods were hostile toward each other. Now, they united and faced off against the elders of the Elixir Refinery Palace. Chapter 1151. Liuli Region Ruler, we will definitely do a good job. The elders of the Alchemy Palace spoke one after another. However, there weren't many elders here, only 3. It wasn't that there were too few elders in the Alchemy Palace. Rather, there wasn't a need for so many of them. 3 of them would be enough. For the sake of fairness, the God Creation Palace required everyone to score. On the other hand, the Alchemy Palace was different. They were completely an outsider, and the grading was absolutely fair. Thus, they did not need too many people. Then I'll leave it to the elders of the Alchemy Palace, Region Lord Colored Glaze said with a faint smile. When the Alchemy Palace elder turned to look at Elder Dong Yun and the others, his eyes flickered with disdain. I didn't think that we would be grading your disciples here. Let us see how many alchemy grandmasters have been held back by artifact forging. The one who spoke was Elder Wu Yuan, the head elder of the Alchemy Palace. His position was extremely high. Even though he couldn't match up to Elder Go Huang and the others, he was already very close. Judging from the current situation, it wouldn't be long before he could truly reach the level of Elder Go Huang. An alchemy grandmaster who was delayed by refining? I think you're just an artifact refinement grandmaster who's been held back by alchemy. Elder Dong Yun harumphed coldly and immediately pointed the spearhead at Elder Wu Yuan, not holding back in the slightest. That's right. Some geniuses should have joined the Palace of Gods. Refining equipment would allow them to unleash their full potential, yet they chose to join the Alchemy Palace. Elder Xiao Tian chimed in from the side. For a moment, the two of them were actually on the same side. Let's see how your disciples are doing. You've basically forgotten about your alchemy abilities. Elder Wu Yuan smiled and said, I wonder if we can still refine high-grade pills. Who knows, we might not even be able to refine high-grade pills like Fan Yu's, right? If you can't refine it, then so be it. We all specialize in refining tools. If you have the ability, then let your disciple refine a reincarnation-grade weapon. Elder Dong Yun retorted fiercely. Elder Wu Yuan was at a loss for words. There was really no way he could forge a weapon. Just like them, he had basically forgotten all about it. It was not advisable to be half-hearted, so he had basically forgotten everything he had learned. Now, it's the Region Lord Liuli who came up with the questions. If you have the ability, go and argue with her. Elder Wu Yuan retorted with a sneer. He suddenly remembered that this was a question set by the Region Lord of the Colored Glaze region. In that case, he would handle this matter accordingly. They were helpless and could only see if their disciple could get a high score. While they were bickering, the disciples had already made their preparations. In their minds, they were constantly recalling the pill refinement method. At the same time, they read the pill recipes provided around them. It was as if they were preparing for an exam. They were cramming at the last minute and kept reading the pill recipes. Only Yi Tianyun is very calm. He doesn't need to look at anything. He just wait for the start of the competition. Little junior brother, don't you want to take a look at the recipe? Heavenly Lord Fire Lotus asked. I happen to know a little about alchemy, so I don't need to look at the pill recipe. Yi Tianyun said with a smile. Even if you know a little, you still have to practice. Otherwise, you will be at a disadvantage, Fire Lotus Heavenly Lord said hurriedly. There's really no need for that. I still have some confidence. Tianyun smiled lightly and said, even if you see the pill recipe, it won't help you much, you still need to build your own foundation. Alright, I'll go take a look. Master Li Tianyang Lord wasn't good at this, so he had to look at the XT. So many geniuses went to look, but Tianyun didn't. This situation soon attracted people's attention. They all looked over, which made Tianyun feel a little hurt. Looks like I have to pretend. Tianyun shook his head. He finally chose to go to the bookshelf and look for some XT. He didn't want to read, but there were too many people looking at him, so he could only do so. Although he had to be high profile, he didn't want to be stared at like a rare beast. Region Master Liuli didn't give them a long time, 3 days at most. After 3 days, the competition would begin. 3 days was enough for them to read a lot of XT books and understand a lot of content. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. One by one, they returned to their original positions. Some of them brought the XT book with them. This didn't violate the rules. Region Master Liuli only gave them 3 days to read, but it didn't mean they couldn't read after 3 days. After 3 days they could read as they pleased. However, the time for XT was included, so it depended on their confidence. Since you focus on smithing and don't have enough experience in XT, I'll give you more time. The time is 1 month. After 1 month, only the XT with the highest grade will be chosen for evaluation. Elder Wu Yuan stood up and announced the rules. After looking at the contestants, he said in a deep voice, "Now, the competition officially begins." As soon as he said that, the contestants immediately began to XT. They had to start from all aspects, so it would take more time. Soon, they were all immersed in XT immediately. Some of them began to XT very skillfully. Their technique was not simple, and they seemed to be quite familiar with it. They could easily refine a Fan Yu grade 7 XT without any difficulty. The one who did this was Lord of Heaven Shu Bo. It was unexpected that he had some ability in XT. Unfortunately, I know how to refine pills. The bookworm Heavenly Monarch laughed heartily. He was extremely happy. Not only him, but the other contestants also refined XT of a higher grade. However, they were all Fan Yu grade, not God Realm grade. This wasn't their specialty, but it was already quite good to be able to refine XT of this level. Most of the contestants had a bitter look on their faces, feeling like they wanted to die. Their smithing ability seemed to be useless here. First, they refined the most common dark steel, followed by XTXT. To them, they just wanted to have a normal competition of refining weapons. They really didn't understand anything else. Only the region lord of colored glaze could come up with such a strange topic. Elder Eastcloud, didn't you say that your disciple is experienced and knowledgeable? What about now? Elder Shao Tian said proudly from the side, our Lord of Heaven is truly knowledgeable and has outstanding abilities. Not only was he skilled in smithing, he was also skilled in alchemy. Among the 3 people you sent out, which one of them is better at alchemy? They had only been united for a short while, but they were already showing off to each other. Elder Dong Yun's heart sank. He was very clear about the standards of the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven and the Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven. They definitely didn't have a high standard in alchemy. As for Tianyun, he wasn't sure. Chapter 1152. Elder East Cloud had some expectations for Tianyun. However, whether or not Tianyun would be able to respond to his expectations was another matter. At the very least, he knew that with Flaming Lotus Lord of Heaven and Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven's abilities, it was impossible for them to refine high-quality pills. Compared to Shu Bo Lord of Heaven, there was a huge gap. He was afraid that he would not be able to catch up. In particular, other than Elder Shao Tian, the other opponents also had their own strong points, and all of them could refine pills of a higher grade. However, Elder Shao Tian was the happiest. He felt that this round was prepared for them. They could easily get a high score. Shu Bo, Lord of Heaven, it seems that we have won this round. Elder Shao Tian felt gratified. Although this question was a little strange, they had someone who could refine high-quality pills. It was a huge advantage for them. That's for sure. I don't think anyone can refine pills better than me in this round. Shu Bo, Lord of Heaven, was extremely proud. He felt that the championship was already his. Among so many competitors, he could refine the highest grade pills. He could continue to raise it later. At that time, he would be even more ahead of the others. They also looked over at Yi Tianyun. Before, Yi Tianyun was in the lead. What about now? Yi Tianyun stood there motionlessly, as if he had become stupid. Elder East Cloud, what's wrong with your disciple? Isn't he experienced and knowledgeable? No, being experienced and knowledgeable doesn't mean that he is more capable. Elder Shao Tian laughed loudly. He felt that Shu Bo, Lord of Heaven, was even more capable. Elder East Cloud did not say a word. He could not refute this point. Damn it, this Elder Shao Tian is really arrogant. If we were to compete in refining, I would definitely not lose. Flaming Lotus Lord of Heaven clenched his teeth. He felt that the Glaze Region Lord's question was too abnormal. It was not fair at all. That's right. If we were to compete in equipment forging, we would definitely beat them to a pulp. Yulong, Lord of Heaven, gritted his teeth. He was also very unhappy. This caused many participants to feel dissatisfied with the Region Lord, but they didn't dare to say anything. If anyone dared to say anything, they wouldn't just be locked in the reflection tower, they would be killed on the spot. How could he not die if he cursed a Region Master? Moreover, it wasn't just a simple execution, but a capital punishment. Just as the two of them were feeling very unhappy, a flash of flame suddenly shot up into the sky. Boom! A pillar of fire soared into the sky, followed by a flaming lotus that gently floated at the side, surrounding the furnace. It seemed that some kind of rare treasure had been born. At that moment, everyone's attention was focused on it. They realized that the source of the fire was none other than Yi Tianyun's. Such a shocking pillar of fire caused many people to be stunned, especially the disciples of the Alchemy Palace. They were all dumbfounded when they saw it. This is an elixir pill from the God Realm. It looks like it's at least a grade 2 elixir pill? Am I seeing a ghost? A disciple of the God Realm refined a grade 2 elixir pill? Quick, pinch me. It hurts. Damn it, it really is a grade 2 elixir pill from the God Realm. It looks like he's very familiar with the technique. He's definitely a God alchemy master. Each and every disciple of the Alchemy Palace suspected that their eyes were playing tricks on them. It could be said that the level that Yi Tianyun displayed was even higher than theirs. A grade 2 God alchemy master might not be considered very strong in the Alchemy Palace, but he was at least considered average among the newcomers. The problem was that Yi Tianyun was a disciple of the God Realm Palace, not the Alchemy Palace. The two of them weren't on the same level. Now that Yi Tianyun was able to refine such a powerful elixir pill, many of the spectators and elders started to doubt whether Yi Tianyun was an alchemy master. However, after seeing Yi Tianyun's refining skills, they felt that he was a pretty good God alchemy master. Now that both of them were very strong, it meant that he cultivated two different abilities and crushed everyone present. This is the aura of a grade 2 elixir pill from the God Realm. Elder Dong Yun took a deep breath. He was still hoping for a miracle from Yi Tianyun. Now a miracle really happened. A grade 2 elixir pill from the God Realm shocked everyone present. A grade 2 elixir pill from the God Realm wasn't rare. What was rare was the ability to cultivate both. Bang, bang, bang. At this moment, some of the participants failed their refinement and exploded in the furnace. They were frightened by the elixir pill refined by Yi Tianyun to the point that they failed. This scene was too shocking. This could be said to be the best. Even the more powerful Lord of Heaven, Shu Bo, was left in the dust. This is impossible. How can he be a god alchemy master? Elder Shao Tian felt that he was going crazy and was about to go crazy. Lord of Heaven, Shu Bo, was stupefied. His previous pride and confidence were instantly shattered by Yi Tianyun. Not even a speck was left. Interesting. This kid is also a god alchemy master. This is a little out of my expectations. Region Lord Colored Glaze's eyes lit up. She took another look at Yi Tianyun. Not only is he a god alchemy master, but he is also a god alchemy master. I even suspect that he has reincarnated. I don't think he has reincarnated. Otherwise, he wouldn't be staying in the Fanyu. Elder Go Huang shook his head and denied it. If one was reincarnated, they would choose a place. After they were born, someone would immediately go over to receive them. Then, they would be nurtured with the most abundant resources and strive to nurture them as quickly as possible. They would awaken their memories in the shortest time possible. Therefore, those who could reincarnate usually had a certain status and background. I can feel that there is indeed no aura of reincarnation. But if that's the case, to be able to teach such a powerful disciple, I wonder what kind of master he is? Region Lord Colored Glaze smiled faintly. Looks like this competition is indeed a little interesting, more interesting than the previous ones. These questions I came up with really hit the mark by a stroke of luck, digging out some geniuses. That's. Elder Go Huang's face twitched. He suspected that these questions were set by Region Lord Colored Glaze based on his mood. As for how the questions were set, he was too embarrassed to ask. Yi Tianyun ignored the gazes around him. He quickly gathered the medicinal pellet in the furnace and pulled it out. An incomparably smooth and round medicinal pellet floated down from the air, landing on his palm. It's done, a grade 2 God Realm medicinal pellet. Yi Tianyun opened his palm. An astonishing grade 2 God Realm medicinal pellet appeared in front of everyone's eyes. There was no need to refine too many times. A single grade 2 God Realm medicinal pellet was enough to show disdain for all heroes. Chapter 1153. Yi Tianyun's performance had shocked them. Especially Elder Wu Yuan, who felt that Yi Tianyun had been held up. Now that he was able to reach such a high standard in 2 professions, what if he focused on one? He might be able to reach an even higher standard, but he was now a disciple of the God Forging Palace, which made Elder Wu Yuan feel that it was a pity. Hold up my ass. I was the one who said refining elixir pills would be held up. Elder Dong Yun scolded with a smile after he regained his senses. There was no hint of dissatisfaction on his face. Instead, he was so happy that he was about to go crazy. He never expected Yi Tianyun to be a divine alchemy master, which was beyond his expectations. Damn it, kid, if you join my elixir refinement palace, I promise to nurture you with all my might. Elder Wu Yuan took a few steps to stand in front of Yi Tianyun and tried to headhunt him in front of so many people. Elder Wu Yuan, you are really thick-skinned to try to headhunt someone in front of me. Elder Dong Yun also walked over and glared at him fiercely. So what if I'm headhunting you? It's a waste to stay in the God Forging Palace. Elder Wu Yuan was just that thick-skinned. He felt that Yi Tianyun was not bad and wanted to headhunt him immediately. I feel that it would be a waste if he really joined the Elixir Refinement Palace. Elder Dong Yun retorted. The two of them quarreled continuously in front of everyone like two kids. Everyone else looked at each other, especially the participants, who were treated like air and left to the side. However, it was no wonder. The standard that Yi Tianyun had displayed far exceeded the other participants. The other participants had at most refined Fan Yu at grade 7 or 8. Compared to grade 1 or 2 in the God Realm, they were worlds apart. They were naturally given the cold shoulder. Elder Wu Yuan didn't even look at them. Unless they displayed a standard that was similar to Yi Tianyun's or higher, he wouldn't bother with them. The current situation was awkward. Lee Tianyun was the star of the show, while the others were reduced to supporting characters. They couldn't even be compared to him. Cough cough, elders, please stop quarreling. It's time to start the scoring. Let's focus on the God-forging palaces test. Elder Go Huang stood up and advised the two of them to stop arguing. With so many people watching, it was really embarrassing. Humph. Only then did the two of them stop arguing. Elder Wu Yuan walked up to Lee Tianyun, and without even glancing at the pill, he said, "Full score, 20 points." He didn't even take the pill to check and directly gave a score of 20 points, which was shocking. Elder Wu Yuan, 20 points just like that? Elder Xiao Tian exclaimed. In that case, I wonder how many points Elder Xiao Tian thinks should be given? Elder Wu Yuan looked around and said indifferently, Lord Luli, give him a full score of 20 points. His current results are very outstanding, even better than the outstanding disciples of our alchemy palace. If this isn't enough to get full marks, then what will? Originally, the region Lord Colored Glaze did not expect the disciples of the Hall of Gods to be able to refine good elixirs when he set this topic. He directly refined something that even our alchemy palace disciples can't compare to. How can he not get full marks? Elder Wu Yuan's explanation was clear and logical. He didn't give random scores and was completely reasonable. Even the disciples of the alchemy palace were defeated. If this wasn't full marks, then what would be? If it was according to the standards of the alchemy palace, this naturally wouldn't be able to get full marks. But now that it was decided according to the standards of the Hall of Gods, it would definitely be different. Alright then. Elder Xiao Tian could only agree. This way, he would get full marks and instantly widen the gap between him and Lee Tianyun. Now, he could only hope that Shu Bo, the Lord of Heaven, would be able to obtain an elixir of a higher grade to close the gap between them. Sigh, Elder Xiao Tian, this disciple of mine is too knowledgeable. Not only is he knowledgeable, but he is also more capable. I'm really sorry. Elder Dong Yun flashed over and couldn't help but mock. Elder Xiao Tian's expression turned ugly. Truly, one had to pay for what they did. He originally thought that he would be able to suppress Elder Dong Yun in this round, but who knew that he would be easily surpassed? Humph, the third round is the true test of standards. Elder Xiao Tian waved his hand and couldn't be bothered to argue with Elder Dong Yun. Elder Dong Yun smiled. This fellow was really stubborn and refused to admit defeat. Soon, all of them finished refining elixirs. Their standards were different, and the difference was huge. It wouldn't be like the first round. Although there was a difference, it wouldn't be as huge. After all, some only liked to refine equipment and didn't like refining elixirs at all. They basically had zero foundation. With this kind of zero foundation, how could he possibly achieve good results? It would already be very good if he could refine a Mortal Realm Grade 3 or Grade 4 Spirit Beast. Time passed in the blink of an eye, and soon, it was time for the final scoring. Shu Bo, the Lord of Heaven, tried his best to refine, but he could only refine a 4th grade Fan Yu elixir and couldn't advance any further. It wasn't something that could be refined just because one wanted to. One needed a stronger foundation to be able to refine it. Hence, his final result was only the 8th grade Fan Yu elixir. The rest of the highest grades were similar to him, all of them at the 8th grade Fan Yu elixir. The lowest grade elixir was still 3rd grade or 4th grade. For these beginners, it was already a pretty good result. However, compared to the elixirs refined by Lee Tianyun, they were no different from trash. In terms of scores, the difference between the two was like heaven and earth. The lowest score was 3 or 4 points, and the highest score, other than Lee Tianyun's 20 points, was around 11 or 12 points. In this round, Lee Tianyun pulled away from the second place by 8 points, which was equivalent to the result of the first round twice. This made many of the participants' expressions turn uglier and uglier. These questions were simply at the level of a scam. If they couldn't display their refining skills, how could they compete? After the second round ended, all of them stood in their groups, their faces full of displeasure. Tianyun's side could be said to be flushed with success, while Elder Dongyun was grinning from ear to ear. Flaming Lotus Lord of Heaven and the rest were full of praises. They didn't expect Tianyun to have such shocking refining skills. Little junior brother, your refining skills are so strong. No wonder you weren't willing to look at the elixir recipes. Flaming Lotus Lord of Heaven looked at him and smiled. Since you know how to refine elixirs, you can't decline when I ask you to refine elixirs in the future. That's right. This saves me the trouble of looking for disciples from the alchemy palace to refine elixirs. I can save a lot of money. Yulong Lord of Heaven and the rest surrounded him, as if they had found a treasure, and kept praising him. Cough cough, there's no need to say these things for now. Lord Tianyun, how did you cultivate to be able to refine elixirs to such a high level? Elder Dongyun asked. Well, I was a little interested, so I cultivated a little and became like this. Tianyun spread his hands helplessly. This was not nonsense, it was indeed an interest. Chapter 1154. After the end of the second round, everyone was full of complaints. Although they didn't say it out loud, it was obvious from their expressions that they were extremely dissatisfied. Glazed Region Lord smiled faintly. It seemed that this situation was within her expectations. No matter who it was, they would be dissatisfied with this. It was supposed to be a competition in the Temple of Gods, so why did the ability to refine elixirs appear out of nowhere? This was puzzling, and no one knew what Region Lord Glaze was thinking to choose such an assessment method. I know everyone is very dissatisfied. Why did the Temple of Gods competition include the content of the Elixir Refinement Palace? Region Lord Glaze glanced at everyone and smiled faintly. I just wanted to see your abilities in this aspect. Sometimes it's important to have a variety of abilities. If you cultivate carefully, you'll realize that there are many similarities between the two, and it'll be easier to cultivate. Some people will feel that if you focus on your abilities, you'll seem mediocre on both sides. After all, being overly comprehensive means being mediocre. That's undeniable, but some people can put more effort into cultivating both. Especially since both have similar similarities. As long as you have an amazing flame, it'll be much easier to refine. After saying so much, I just want to see how many disciples in the Temple of Gods are able to reach the level of cultivating both. Following that, I'll put in more effort to groom them. If someone isn't interested and only wants to focus on one branch, that's also worth praising. I just want to select some disciples to groom so that they can cultivate both. This will be of great help in the future, and one day, they'll be able to combine both. They won't have to worry about not having an elixir refinement master by their side, and they'll be able to refine elixirs to recover. You can't just stay here forever. If you go out to train, you'll definitely encounter such situations. Region Lord Glaze explained a lot, and everyone came to a sudden realization. It turned out that she wanted to groom talents in this aspect and let them master a certain level of elixir refinement. To put it bluntly, in a large-scale battle, divine craftsmen were trash. Weapons were important, but what about after they were made? If they went out to train, they would be surrounded by elixirs. Coincidentally, their injuries were severe, and they couldn't refine elixirs into elixirs. After all, refining weapons couldn't restore their bodies, and their lives were the most important. Region Lord Glaze wanted to increase their survivability. It was important to be able to create amazing weapons, but when they were forced into a corner, having the ability to refine elixirs was a good choice. After everyone knew about it, their dissatisfaction gradually disappeared. It turned out that this was a disguised way to find a disciple who could dual cultivate. The two of them had a lot in common, so it was not a problem for them to dual cultivate. Everyone's eyes lit up. In that case, there was also value in nurturing them? So that's what Region Ruler Azure Glaze meant. Only then did Elder Go Huang understand the situation. He smiled and said, "This is a good idea. We can train more disciples and make them more knowledgeable." "I agree with this idea," the other elders echoed. It was obvious that the glazed region lord had said this out of the blue. Even they hadn't discussed it before. Tianyun, who was below, narrowed his eyes. To him, the meaning was different. It was very likely that the glazed region master knew about the situation of the Divine Realm War. It was of great significance to them to increase their efforts in nurturing disciples in this aspect. If it affected them, it would be perfect, since divine craftsmen could refine pills and forge weapons. As for whether or not an alchemist could also practice weapon refining, there was not much of a need for that. He just had to focus on alchemy. After all, alchemy was important enough. What could be more important than alchemy? Not only could it heal injuries, but it could also increase one's cultivation level. It was very important at all times. Divine craftsmen had a very high status, but it was also very awkward at times. Weapons were needed for combat, but after forging them, it would be rather awkward. The truly practical ones were still alchemists. They just had to focus on alchemy. After the competition, if you are interested, you can report to Elder Wu Yuan and increase your cultivation in this aspect. Region Lord Azure Glaze said, "Of course, the points for the second round will be invalid. It is just to make you feel a little more nervous." Everyone was instantly speechless. They didn't expect that all their efforts would be in vain. Especially Tianyun's 20 points. Didn't that mean that all their efforts were in vain? After Elder Shao Tian heard this, he was delighted. He looked at Elder Dong Yun and smiled. It is really a waste of effort. So what if he is first place? His points are still invalid. Elder Dong Yun started to feel unhappy. In the end, he was happy for nothing? Just as they thought that all their efforts were in vain, Region Lord Azure Glaze looked at Tianyun and said with a faint smile, "Although the points will not be counted, Earthly Monarch Tianyun, who is first place, will still receive a reward." Immediately after, Region Lord Azure Glaze flicked his hand, and a cauldron slowly floated down from the sky and landed in his hand. After Tianyun received it, he was surprised to find out that it was a low-grade Heaven Dao alchemy cauldron. It was definitely a very good treasure. "Thank you, Region Lord Azure Glaze." After receiving it, Tianyun hurriedly expressed his gratitude. He thought that all his efforts were in vain. He didn't expect that Region Lord Azure Glaze would gift this cauldron to him, which made all the god alchemists envious. Elder Shao Tian, who had previously mocked Tianyun for working for nothing, received another ruthless slap in the face. Although the points were not counted, this alchemy cauldron was definitely not bad. In fact, it could even be said to be very good. This is the alchemy cauldron that I used in the past. It is called Flowing Jade Cauldron, and its grade is pretty good. This will be your compensation. As for the other participants, they will also be compensated. When the time comes, Elder Wu Yuan will naturally inform you. Region Lord Azure Glaze didn't give them any rewards, which instantly made them feel very disappointed. When the time comes to seek compensation from Elder Wu Yuan, it would be nothing more than choosing a decent alchemy cauldron or a decent elixir formula. As for people like Tianyun, who received a low-grade Heaven Dao alchemy cauldron, they were on a completely different level. This low-grade Heaven Dao alchemy cauldron was something that even the elders of the Palace of Gods could not create. Only the elders with very good standards could create it, and the success rate was very low. This type of treasure had always been extremely difficult to create, and it wasn't that easy to grasp. Of course, Tianyun knew that this was a good item, and a very good one at that. It would be of great help to him in alchemy. The others were even more envious. For things like alchemy cauldrons, the longer they were used, the better the effects would be. For example, the alchemy cauldron that Region Lord Azure Glaze gifted. Although it was only a low-grade Heaven Dao alchemy cauldron, after using it for a long time, Its effects could even be compared to a middle-grade Heaven Dao alchemy cauldron. Chapter 1155. After Yi Tianyun received his reward, the participants and elders who thought that he was wasting his effort all shut their mouths obediently. It was really a tragedy that he was immediately pulled back just as he was saying that he was wasting his effort. The second round is over. Let's begin the third round. Luli Region Lord did not stop and prepared to announce the content of the third round. After everyone heard this, their hearts jumped and they felt extremely nervous. They were all worried that Luli Region Lord would give another abnormal question and make them carve a god's seal or something. That would really be the end of them. Alchemy was still somewhat related, but carving a god's seal was really something to curse at. There was no connection between the two. Alchemy was still related to flames, so how could carving a god's seal be related? There was no connection at all. If there was really something related, then it would be using mental power. Luli Region Lord smiled at them and said, "Don't be so nervous. This time, there will not be a question like before, but an official question. This round will be the time for you to display your highest standard. The lowest score is 0, and there is no maximum score. However, there will be stage scores. The elders will mark this point. As long as you are strong enough, you will be able to get a higher score." Everyone's eyes lit up. A test with no upper limit was indeed what they needed. Creating a weapon of the highest level would allow them to get a higher score. As for how they would be graded, it would depend on what the 8 elders said. Let me explain this. The one who stood up was not Elder Dong Yun or Elder Xiao Tian, but a seemingly low-key Elder Liang Ji. Although his standards were not the highest, at least his temper was not as bad as theirs. The grading is very simple. The lowest score starts from the rebirth level. Anything below the rebirth level will not be counted. The highest score is refining a treasure, the intermediate is refining a weapon, and the lowest is refining a defensive equipment. The points are 5, 3, and 2 points respectively. Moving up a level, the points will double. As for the other details, there will also be additional points. This can only be evaluated after the treasure is refined. The rules were very simple. If it was refining an intermediate rebirth level treasure, then it would be 10 points. If it was a high-grade treasure, then it would be 20 points. This was a doubling based on the previous level, not the original doubling. Refining treasures was the most difficult, and the further one went, the more difficult it would be. Hence, the points were usually higher. As for what the treasures were, they were naturally alchemy furnaces, divine rune brushes, or some kind of protective treasures. These were all practical treasures. As for battle-type treasures, the points would naturally be lower. These requirements would not be as harsh, so the difficulty of refining them would be much lower. Everyone nodded. They already had some ideas in mind. This is an opportunity. You have to perform well and let the glazed region lord see your shocking abilities. Elder Xiao Tian transmitted his voice to the Lord of Heaven, telling him that he had to give it his all. I understand. Shu Bo Lord of Heaven's eyes were filled with raging flames. He looked at Yi Tianyun, his heart filled with fighting spirit. He felt that he would definitely not lose this time. This time, they were free to do whatever they wanted, and it wasn't as restrictive as before. Therefore, as long as they were able to refine something of a high standard, they would be able to obtain a higher score. It was the same for the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven's side. It was time to test the grade of their divine craftsmen and where their true limits were. It could be said that they were aiming for a superior grade reincarnation grade treasure, which was the limit for most of them. As for the inferior grade Heaven Dao grade, it was too difficult and could be said to be a heaven-defying grade. The points wouldn't be as simple as doubling. Elder Liangji only mentioned the standard of the reincarnation grade and didn't mention the Heaven Dao grade. In their opinion, none of the disciples present were able to refine a Heaven Dao grade weapon. Although there was no upper limit, there was a limit to one's ability. It would be better if someone could refine a Heaven Dao grade weapon. Junior brother, you are at a disadvantage this time. It is already very good for you to be able to refine a middle grade reincarnation grade treasure steadily. That's right. The previous tests weren't about specialization. The current test is about specialization. If the grade is too low, it will be impossible for you to make a breakthrough. The Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven and the others shook their heads. They knew that Yi Tianyun's standard was very good, but his grade was too low, so the grade he could refine was naturally lower. If Yi Tianyun was given more time, he would definitely surpass them easily. However, Yi Tianyun was still young and needed to go through many tests. Yi Tianyun just smiled casually and didn't say much. Indeed, in their opinion, he was at most a grade 1 divine craftsman. In fact, he could still level up. As long as he wanted to, it wouldn't be a problem for him to rush to grade 3 divine craftsman. Due to the upgraded data, the sin value and proficiency points were interlinked. It could even be interlinked with the crazy point. This way, he could continue to increase his grade. However, it would consume a lot of sin value and proficiency points, but if he really couldn't rush up, he could only do this. After all, he had to go to the water core area to cultivate. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to break through to the 10th refining Earth Monarch level. That was the number 1 Earth Monarch throughout the ages. Who could compare to such an honor? The competition will last for a month. That's enough time for you to forge the weapon you're most proud of. I hope that you can obtain the best results in this round. After Elder Liang Ji announced, the competition officially began. The materials were still chosen from the side. The elders had prepared a lot of materials, even heavenly path grade materials. This wasn't a problem. Originally, the God Creation Palace specialized in this area, so there was naturally a lot of materials. After the competition started, one by one, they quickly went to get the materials. Yi Tianyun also went to get the materials. The materials he got at the beginning were materials that could be used to forge high-grade reincarnation grade treasures. As for Heavenly Path grade, the difficulty was on the higher side. It was already very good to be able to forge high-grade reincarnation grade treasures steadily. Anyway, he had a slight lead in the first round. If he could fight his way to the front in this round, he would be able to get into the top 3. His actions naturally attracted everyone's attention. After all, he was too conspicuous and high-profile in the first 2 rounds. Naturally, they would pay attention to his actions. When the elders saw that he was holding high-grade reincarnation grade materials, all of them frowned. Could it be that Yi Tianyun had reached the level of a grade 2 or 3 divine craftsman? But according to his cultivation, he shouldn't be able to break through to grade 2 or 3 so quickly. It would already be very good if he could stabilize as a grade 1 divine craftsman, especially when he had amazing alchemy skills. If he could become a grade 2 or 3 divine craftsman, wouldn't he be heaven-defying? Upgrade Divine Craftsman Grade. Chapter 1156. Ding, successfully deducted 63 million proficiency points. Due to insufficient proficiency, the corresponding value will be deducted from the sin value. Ding, successfully upgraded to grade 2 Divine Craftsman. Obtained new forging recipe and ability, increase forging success rate. Upgrade again. Ding, successfully deducted 500 million proficiency points. Due to insufficient proficiency, the corresponding value will be deducted from the sin value and crazy value and converted into proficiency points. Ding, successfully upgraded to grade 3 Divine Craftsman. Obtained new forging recipe and ability. In one breath, he directly rushed from grade 1 Divine Craftsman to grade 3 Divine Craftsman. He immediately caught up with the genius disciples like Fiery Lotus Lord of Heaven and can be said to be on the same level as them. Under the same conditions, refining a high-grade reincarnation rank treasure is not very difficult. Moreover, He has a lot of blessings, so his success rate is much higher than them. After the successful upgrade, Tianyun calmly began to refine. He did not use the holy fire, but the demonic fire. The heaven-burning sacred fire can greatly increase the success rate, but he will not expose it for the time being. Unless he has no other choice, he still intends to keep this trump card. If he cannot expose it, then he will not expose it. Moreover, the 2 demonic fires are enough for him to use to refine this high-grade reincarnation rank treasure. There is no need for the heaven-burning sacred fire. Immediately after, Tianyun quickly began to refine, throwing piles of materials directly into the furnace. It can be said to be an extremely rough refining method. Everyone's eyes widened. Tianyun is so strong? Tianyun ignored their gazes and quickly began to refine. The powerful flame continuously melted the materials and began to refine. His technique left everyone dumbfounded. This level is clearly the ability of a grade 3 divine craftsman, not the ability of a grade 1 divine craftsman. With so many elders watching and some disciples who understand the situation, they immediately saw the knack. Tianyun's technique is very skilled. Who said that he is only a grade 1 divine craftsman? God, isn't he at the level of a grade 3 divine craftsman? Forget about the level of a grade 2 divine pill master. How can he reach the level of a grade 3 divine craftsman? One by one, the elders are going crazy. If both of them can cultivate to this level, how much effort do they have to put in to reach this level? This is because he was delayed by refining pills. If he didn't refine elixirs, I reckon he would have already become a grade 4 divine craftsman. Elder East Cloud lamented, feeling as though he was biting back at Elder Wu Yuan. Elder Wu Yuan's expression is not too good. He also did not expect Tianyun to be so amazing as a divine craftsman. This way, it will be difficult to poach him from the divine crafting palace. This is not good news for him. This little junior brother is really hiding his strength. He didn't even use his full strength earlier. Fire Lotus Heavenly Monarch and the others shook their heads. They thought that Tianyun was only a first-grade divine craftsman, but it seemed like they were wrong. That's right, but we will not admit defeat. Even if we are in the same camp, we have to compete. Yulong Lord of Heaven laughed. The flames in his hands rose, and he increased the intensity of the flames as he started to refine the materials. Although they were all in the same faction, they wouldn't go easy on their opponent. They would honestly display their strongest strength. In the end, who would be able to obtain victory would depend on their individual abilities. It wasn't possible for them to win first place just because their teammates went easy on their opponent. This is a test for everyone. Therefore, there is no point in going easy on an individual. Giving it your all is the key. It is not just the 2 of them. The others have also displayed their highest standard. In order to get into the top 3, they are giving it their all. Boom! Following the sound of an explosion, everyone looked over and realized that Shu Bo Lord of Heaven's side had exploded. Just when everyone thought that Shu Bo Lord of Heaven has failed, they took a closer look and realized that Shu Bo Lord of Heaven did not fail. Instead, the materials in the furnace are constantly exploding. With every explosion, a pile of impurities will be refined out. Such a method is extremely terrifying. It is simply a brand new refining method. It is rare to see such a situation. This is an explosive stream. It is a relatively rare method. If you are not careful, even the furnace will be blown up. Now that you mention it, I do recall that this explosive stream is extremely terrifying. It can maximize the effect of the materials. From the looks of it, he is not just simply refining. He is trying to break through to a higher level. Break through to a higher level? Don't tell me he is trying to refine a heaven law weapon? They were all stunned. A grade 3 divine craftsman can refine a heaven law weapon? That is impossible. The success rate is too low. It is basically negligible. Usually, there is only one possibility of failure. He is trying to refine a heaven law weapon? Elder Dong Yun and the others frowned. It is not a good thing to refine something above your level. Elder Shao Tian sneered. Who said that Shu Bo Lord of Heaven is only a grade 3 divine craftsman? All of you are too naive. He just broke through recently. What? Grade 4 divine craftsman? All the elders were shocked. Isn't it a little too fast for him to reach grade 4 divine craftsman at such a level? Following closely, Shu Bo Lord of Heaven displayed the ability that he should have. The standard of a grade 4 divine craftsman was immediately displayed. Be it in terms of fire control or technique, it was not something that a grade 3 divine craftsman could display. The determination of grade wasn't as straightforward as cultivation. Most of the time, it depended on the technique. To be able to refine a heaven law weapon, one would definitely be a grade 4 divine craftsman. Heavenly Monarch Shu Bo's face was filled with arrogance. This was what he was most proud of. In the previous 2 stages, he wasn't able to display this ability. Right now, he was finally able to display it and make everyone look at him in a different light. He even looked over at Yi Tianyun with a provocative look in his eyes. It was as though he was saying, "So what if you won the first and second rounds? The third round is still the main point." Yi Tianyun was expressionless and couldn't be bothered with this guy. He didn't expect to get first place. He just wanted to be in the top 3. In any case, being in the top 3 was enough for him to make a request. There was no need for him to get first place. He observed the situation around him. Most of the weapons were mid-grade reincarnation grade weapons. Some were high-grade reincarnation grade weapons. He only needed to refine high-grade reincarnation grade weapons. With the addition of some special materials, he would be able to get into the top 3. When he was about to choose to keep a low profile, a crisp voice entered his ears. Ding! Successfully accepted the special quest, take first place in God Creation Palace. Reward: 1x Forging God Stone, 100 million Crazy Points, 10 million Proficiency. At the same time, you will also receive the title of the strongest newcomer king in God Creation Palace. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.